My shift started the same way it always did. Too much coffee, too little sleep, and the constant hum of the dispatch center that somehow felt louder when the night was quiet. I've been a 911 dispatcher for just under 4 months. Still green. Still figuring out the rhythm of the night shift. It's a strange job, half boredom, half adrenaline, but I like the quiet hours when it felt like the whole town was holding its breath. At 12:47 a.m., it was one of those still moments. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, and the room smelled faintly of damp carpet. The overhead lights hummed like they were ready to burn out. I had my headset slightly crooked on my head, listening to the tail end of a minor traffic accident call. One car, no injuries, officer on scene, all standard. Then, the line went dead silent. Normally, after a call ends, there's a faint click, maybe a background noise from another line. But this time, there was nothing, just that flat, empty silence. Then came a sound like wind. No, not wind. Static. It was faint at first, like the low hiss of an old radio stuck between stations. I straightened in my chair and checked the monitor. No incoming call. No open line. My headset wasn't even showing active audio. But I could hear it. Bass, come in. Bass, do you read? A man's voice. Rough. Hoarse. Muffled by the static. I froze. I'd heard plenty of radio chatter from officers and EMTs before, but this was different. It had the clipped, tense tone of someone speaking on a two-way radio, not a phone. This is Engine 71. Requesting backup. Repeat, requesting. The voice cut out with a burst of static. I glanced at the line status on my screen. Still nothing. No call. No active radio channel linked to my console. I swallowed and pressed the mic button anyway. This is County Dispatch. Identify yourself. No answer. Just that hiss. Then the voice again, this time faster, more urgent. We're inside. Smoke's everywhere. Second floor is collapsing. Get units. It cut out mid-sentence. I tapped my keyboard, pulling up the station list. Engine 71. I didn't recognize it. Our local fire units didn't go higher than Engine 53. I double-checked, thinking maybe it was a neighboring county. Nothing. My trainer, Lisa, was across the room dealing with a domestic disturbance call. She was leaning over her keyboard, scribbling notes, completely focused. I thought about waving her over, but what would I even say? That I was hearing voices on a line that didn't exist? I pressed the mic again. Engine 71. Can you confirm your location? The static swelled, then softened, like the voice was moving away from the mic. West Side Stairwell, Blockmead. The words dissolved into noise. Then a new sound cut through. A faint, distant roar. It took me a second to place it. The sound of a fire. Not the little crackle you hear when someone's burning logs. This was the deep, hollow roar of a structure burning from the inside out. I could almost smell it, that bitter, chemical bite of scorched insulation and plastic. Engine 71. I need your exact address. My own voice shook as I said it. The answer came quick, like you'd been waiting for me to ask. Station 71, 402, Mason Street. I typed it in before I even thought about it. My fingers froze. Mason Street didn't have a fire station. I pulled up the city map overlay. 402 Mason Street was an empty lot. I knew the spot well enough. It was on the east side of town, fenced off, grass growing tall between broken pavement. The static broke again, and his voice came back, louder now like he was right in my ear. We're losing it here, Bass. Get someone out. Do you copy? I muted my mic and finally waved Lisa over. She glanced at me, covered her handset, and mouthed, "What?" I pointed to my screen. "Do we have any Unit 71? She frowned. "No, what?" I didn't answer right away. I just unmuted and said, "Engine 71, what's your status?" Second floors, a loud crash cut him off. The roar intensified, and for a second, I could swear I heard screaming in the background. Lisa leaned closer, her eyebrows pulling tight. "Is this a prank?" she whispered. I shook my head. "It's not even on a line." The man came back, his voice trembling. Get them out. The stairwell's gone. We're." Static swallowed the rest. I typed 402 Mason Street into the incident log and hit enter, even though I knew how it sounded. Lisa's expression didn't change. She grabbed her keyboard and sent a message to the nearest patrol unit, telling them to check it out. "Whoever it is, they sound like they believe it," she muttered. The static began to fade, but just before it did, I heard something that made my stomach turn cold. "Been too long, Bass. Thought you forgot us." And then it was gone. The line went back to empty hum. Lisa and I just looked at each other for a moment. Then her screen pinged, an update from the patrol unit. They were on Mason Street. There was nothing there, just a fenced-off lot, wet from rain. No fire, no smoke, no heat. We sat in silence for a long time. It wasn't until later that I learned what used to be at 402 Mason Street. Station 71. It burned down in 1998. Four firefighters died inside. I didn't sleep after that shift. Even when I got home, even when the apartment was dark and quiet, my head was still filled with the hiss of static and that strained voice calling for backup. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the number 402 blinking in my mind, like it was lit up in red. The official word from the morning meeting was that it was probably a hoax. That's what they wrote in the incident notes. No fire found. Caller not identified. Line untraceable. That should have been the end of it. But 2 nights later, it happened again. It was a little after 1 in the morning, and I was halfway through updating a missing person report when the noise came back. Same faint static, blooming in my ear like a slow leak of air. I froze. Then, under it, the same man's voice. "Bass, this is Engine 71. Where's that backup?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Engine 71. Can you confirm your location?" There was a pause, and in that pause I could hear the low, distant rumble of a fire again. The popping sound of it giving way. "We're at Mason and Harlow. Side doors blocked. Smoke's thick. Mason and Harlow." I typed it in, and the map showed me exactly what I already knew. Mason Street ended 4 blocks before anything called Harlow. There was no intersection. I tried again, pressing the mic harder against my mouth. "Engine 71. Repeat your cross streets." He came back fast, like he didn't have time to think. "Mason and Harlow. We're losing visibility. Get units in now." I muted my mic, heart pounding, and called to Lisa, who was across the room. "Hey, does Harlow mean anything to you?" She looked up from her screen. "Not in our jurisdiction." "What?" I didn't answer. I just unmuted. "Copy that. Engine 71. Stand by." Static washed over the line for a moment. Then his voice cut through again. "We can't stand by. We got a man down in the stairwell. Repeat, man down. Theirs." The rest was swallowed in a burst of static so sharp it made me flinch. Lisa walked over, frowning at my monitor. "You're getting it again?" I nodded. My mouth felt dry. "They're saying Mason and Harlow." Her brow furrowed. "That doesn't exist." "Exactly." The static cleared just enough for me to hear something I hadn't noticed last time. A voice behind him. Not shouting, not panic, just talking. It was too faint to make out words, but it had a strange rhythm to it. Like someone speaking under their breath, right into his ear. "Engine 71. Can you describe your surroundings?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. 2-story brick. Ladders up on the west side. "We can't reach the top floor. Too much heat." "Theirs." He broke off, and I heard coughing, deep and raw, the kind that shakes the ribs. Lisa's eyes darted to mine. She mouthed, "Record this." I hit the record toggle, even though protocol said we only kept recordings tied to official incident numbers. Something about this felt wrong to let vanish. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. "It's closing in on us, Bass. The smoke, it's not moving right. It's thicker, darker, like it's pushing back." I shivered. "Do you have an exit?" "No exit," he said flatly. "Stairwell's gone. Windows are too high." And he stopped again. This time, the background talking was clearer. It wasn't English. The words, or sounds, were slow, drawn out, almost like they were being dragged. I thought about asking him if someone else was on the line with him, but before I could, the voice on his end seemed to notice me. The static deepened. It was no longer a soft hiss. It had weight to it, like something alive was breathing through the wire. Then I heard, perfectly clear, in a voice that didn't belong to him. "You can't get here." The hairs on my neck stood up. "Engine 71. Who was that?" He didn't answer. Instead, the sound of fire grew louder, closer, and he said, almost pleading, "Bass, just try." And then he was gone. No click, no disconnect sound, just the normal hum in my headset. Lisa was still leaning over me. "Play it back." I scrubbed back on the recording, listening for that other voice. It was still there, too clear to be a trick of the static. We ran the coordinates for Mason and Harlow through every database we had, city records, county archives, even old planning maps. Nothing. That intersection didn't exist. At 1:26 a.m., the nearest patrol car checked 402 Mason Street again. Same as last time. Empty lot, locked fence, no signs of recent disturbance. When I told them about the Harlow Cross Street, there was a long pause. Then one of the officers said, "Funny thing, my granddad used to talk about a Harlow Road. Said it was part of the old industrial district. But that whole area burned down before I was born." When? I asked. He didn't miss a beat. Late 90s, I think. Around the time station 71 went up. I didn't say anything after that. The rest of the shift, I kept glancing at my headset, half expecting the static to return. It didn't. But that voice, the one that wasn't his, stayed with me. Not because of what it said, but because of how certain it sounded. Like it already knew I'd never find them, by the time my next shift rolled around. I convinced myself that maybe it was over. I didn't believe the hoax explanation they wrote in the notes, but I told myself it was a one-off, maybe two off. That there was a limit to whatever was happening. I was wrong. It was a little after 3 in the morning when it started again. I remember the exact time because I just looked at the clock above the supervisor's desk. 3:02. The second hand was ticking so loudly I could hear it over the soft chatter of the other dispatchers. My console was quiet. No pending calls, no units needing updates. I'd leaned back, sipping cold coffee when I heard it. The hiss. At first it was faint, buried under the normal hum of my headset. I thought maybe another dispatcher's channel was bleeding into mine, but then the pitch shifted, like a breath being drawn in. And then the voice. "Bass, this is Engine 71. Where's that backup?" The coffee in my mouth went bitter. I didn't hit the mic right away. My hand just hovered over the keyboard as the sound of fire bloomed in the background, with splintering, debris crashing. I knew what he would say next. "Engine 71, can you confirm your location?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Mason and Harlow, side doors blocked. Smoke's thick." The exact same words. Same tone. Same rhythm. I leaned forward. "Copy. Can you describe your surroundings?" 2-story brick. Ladders up on the west side. "We can't reach the top floor. Too much heat." "Theirs." The cough came right on cue. The same deep, chest-rattling hack I'd heard before. Lisa wasn't on shift that night. I was alone with this. I pulled up the recording from last time on my secondary monitor and played it in sync with the live call. They matched. Every single word, every single sound, down to the creak of something shifting under weight in the background. The only difference was the breathing. This time, there was more of it. Louder. Closer to the mic. And I could hear that other voice earlier. Soft, deliberate. Almost like it was waiting for its turn. I unmuted again. "Engine 71, what's your status?" "It's closing in on us, Bass. The smoke, it's not moving right. It's thicker, darker. Like it's pushing back." My skin prickled. That line. I'd heard it before. But this time, the word darker dragged longer, like he was forcing it out against something pressing on his chest. I remembered what came next in the original call. "No exit," he'd said. "Stairwell's gone. Windows are too high." I waited. But instead, there was a pause. A long one. And then the other voice cut in early. "You can't get here." It was the same voice as before, but now it was sharper. Almost amused. My mouth was dry. "Who is this?" Static swelled, and the firefighter's voice came back, frantic. "Bass, just try." And then silence. The hum returned to my headset, and the timer on the call froze at 6:14, exactly the same length as the first one. I sat there staring at the screen, my reflection ghosted faintly in the black border of the monitor. Every instinct told me to log it and move on. That's what the others would do. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a replay. It was happening again. I called patrol. "Can you check 402 Mason Street again?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. There was a pause on their end. "That lot again? You know it's..." Please, I said. They went. 10 minutes later, the radio crackled. Dispatch, be advised. Lot is clear. No signs of fire or disturbance. I thanked them, logged the call, and just sat there. I thought about the way the second call had shifted. Not much. Just enough to make it clear it wasn't a recording. And the breathing. Always the breathing. The rest of the night, I kept expecting it to come back. It didn't. But at 5:41 a.m., just before shift change, my personal phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. When the voicemail notification came through, I listened with my thumb hovering over the delete button. Static. Then, faint and far away. Mason and Harlow. Smoke's thick. I deleted it, but I didn't throw the phone away. Some part of me wanted to know if it would ring again that IT happened on a Thursday night. The kind of quiet shift where the clock feels like it's moving slower, just to mess with you. Lisa was back that night. We'd barely talked about the last time Engine 71 came through. She didn't like dwelling on things she couldn't explain, and I didn't like the way my chest tightened every time I thought about that other voice. It was around 2:15 a.m. when the hiss came back. Not the faint, crackling bleed I sometimes heard from open mics. This was a steady, heavy static, a kind that felt thick like it had weight. I didn't say anything to Lisa. I just pressed the mic and said, "County Dispatch, go ahead." The reply came instantly. "Base, this is Engine 71. We're in position. Fire's spreading faster than expected. Need backup at once." The same gravelly voice. The same urgency. I didn't ask for his cross streets this time. I already knew where he thought he was. I just said copy, stand by, and then I didn't hang up. Normally, you keep the mic open for short bursts, hit to speak, release to listen. But I kept the channel live, locking the line open so I could hear everything. And what I heard didn't sound like any call I'd ever taken. In the background, there was chaos, boots on debris, voices shouting over each other, metal groaning like a structure ready to give way. I could hear a ladder scraping against brick, the muffled clank of gear being adjusted. But there was something else layered under all of it, a sound that didn't belong in any emergency scene I'd ever heard. It was whispering, not panicked, not even urgent. Calm, methodical, like someone speaking to each firefighter individually under the roar of the flames. I couldn't make out the words at first. Then one of them cut through clear enough to make my stomach turn. It was my name, not dispatch, not base. My actual name. I hadn't said it. No one in that call should have known it. The voice that spoke, it was steady, almost gentle, but it came with a strange undertone, like something was being pulled through narrow spaces. I looked over at Lisa. She'd gone pale, her eyes fixed on my monitor, her own headset slightly tilted so she could listen in. Engine 71, I said carefully, who's speaking in the background? There was a pause, and for a moment all I could hear was the fire and the distant shouting. Then, from far away on the line, "They're not with us." The way he said it made my skin crawl. Another voice, this one urgent, human, shouted something about a collapse on the east side. More boots running. Someone coughing hard enough that it made me cough too. The whisper came again, closer now. "You should come here." I mouthed to Lisa, "It's talking to me." Her eyes flicked to the recording button, and I nodded. She hit it. A moment later, I heard a metallic groan so deep it rattled in my ears, followed by a crash that drowned out everything else. The channel erupted into chaos, shouting, coughing, someone yelling for a line that wasn't there. And then, cutting through all of it, calm as anything. "You can't get here, but you can hear it." I was gripping the desk so tightly my knuckles ached. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I listened. The scene kept unfolding in my ears. Orders shouted, gear clanking, that low, constant roar of fire. But it was wrong. It never moved. In real life, a fire shifts, grows, ebbs. You hear sirens in the distance, changes in position, radio chatter. This was fixed. Like a loop. The same crash happened again, exactly the same way. The same cough at the same moment. Lisa's face went stiff. She noticed too, and the whisper kept threading through it all. Not just my name now, other things. "Stay with us. It's been too long. Don't leave the line." 20 minutes. That's how long we left the channel open. The whole time, Nothing changed except the whispers getting more frequent, more insistent. At 2:36 a.m., I heard the firefighter's voice again, worn and ragged. "Base, we're not making it out." I pressed the mic. "Engine 71. Are you able to move to safety?" The whisper cut him off, almost laughing now. "He can't hear you anymore." And then, without any click or fade, the line went dead. Not like a normal call drop. There was no pop of disconnect. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone like someone had cut the wire with a knife. Lisa and I just sat there, the room suddenly too quiet. When we pulled the recording, the playback was different. The background sound was still there, the fire, the shouting, but the whispers were gone. Every single one. Not even my name. It was like they'd only existed in real time. We sent patrol to Mason Street again. It didn't even sound annoyed anymore, just tired. Same as always. Empty lot, locked fence. No fire, no gear, no one there. But when I got home that morning, I noticed something. My headset, my personal one, the one I keep in my bag, smelled faintly of smoke. Not cigarette smoke. Not the woodsy smell of a campfire. It was the acrid, chemical burn of melted wiring. The kind of smell you don't forget. The kind of smell that sticks to you after you've been somewhere you shouldn't have been able to go. It was the kind of call you don't forget, not because of what happened, but because of how it made you feel. You know that prickling, crawling sensation you get when you're not sure if you're alone? That was this call from the very first second. It was late. My shift had been quiet. The hum of the dispatch room was the only sound. Computers running, the faint buzz of the lights, my own breathing in the headset. Then her voice cut through. It was trembling, shaky in a way you can't fake. She said her name was Melissa. She lived in one of those older houses on the west side of town. Small, single story, built in the 60s. The kind of place with a low crawl space under the floor instead of a basement. She didn't waste time on small talk. "I can hear her," she said. I remember glancing at my screen, thinking I misheard. "Hear who, ma'am?" There was a pause, and in that pause I could hear her breathing quicken. "She's under my floor." Now, sometimes you get people who've been drinking or on something or just lonely and they say things like that. Usually it's a raccoon or a possum or plumbing making noise. But the way she said it, it wasn't the tone of someone telling a story. It was someone begging to be believed. I asked her what she meant exactly, and Melissa told me she'd been lying in bed for the past hour trying to fall asleep. It had been raining earlier, and the air was still damp, the kind that makes a house creak. But this wasn't creaking. She said it started faint, so faint she thought she was dreaming at first. It was the sound of a woman crying. Not sobbing loud, not screaming, just soft, muffled crying. Coming from directly beneath her bed. Melissa said she lay there for a while, frozen, trying to convince herself it was outside. Maybe the TV from a neighbor's place. But then she leaned over the side of the bed, ear toward the carpet, and it got clearer. I asked her if she could hear it right now. Her voice shook. "Yes, I can still hear her. Please, can you send someone?" I dispatched 2 units to her address. While they were on their way, I stayed on the line with her. The protocol is to keep callers calm, but the truth is I didn't have to do much talking. Melissa was focused entirely on listening. Every time I asked a question, there was this little gap before she'd answer, like she was waiting for something else to speak instead. She told me the crying had moments when it would stop completely, and when it stopped, it was replaced by something worse. A sound like movement, like shifting, like something or someone was dragging themselves slowly along the dirt under her house. I remember asking her how old the house was, if she'd had any problems with the crawl space before. She said no. Her father had sealed it off years ago when she moved in because she hated knowing it was there. That part caught me off guard. "Sealed it off?" I asked. "Yeah, the hatch is nailed shut. It's in the hallway closet. You'd have to pull up boards to get in." My officers were still a few minutes away, and I kept her talking, even though my own neck was tight and my skin felt cold just hearing her describe it. She said the crying would sometimes rise, like whoever was under there was turning their head toward her, and then it would sink again, fading back into the dirt. At one point, she whispered into the phone. "It's louder now." I could hear it in her voice, the way she was barely breathing. I asked if she was safe where she was. "I'm in the living room," she said. "I didn't want to be over it anymore." I told her that was good. "Stay there. Keep the doors locked." 2 minutes later, my units arrived. I could hear them knock on her door through the phone, and Melissa's voice changed, like she was holding back this flood of relief. She opened the door, and I stayed on the line while they came in. The officers spoke to her. Then one of them asked if they could check the crawl space. Melissa told them where the hatch was, in a closet. I could hear them moving through the house, their boots on the wood floor, the sound of the closet door opening. Then, hammering noises, the pull of nails being yanked out. One of the officers came back on a line with me. "We're going to take a look. She says it's sealed pretty tight." I listened as they pried up the hatch. When they opened it, there was silence. One officer went down with a flashlight. I couldn't hear the crying anymore, just their voices echoing in the tight space, asking each other to check the far end, shuffling in the dirt. Then one of them called up, "Nothing down here." The other confirmed it. "All clear." Melissa's voice came back on, thin and confused. It's not possible. You didn't hear it." Neither officer had heard a thing while inside. They checked the perimeter, the yard, even the neighbor's property. Nothing. No footprints, no disturbed dirt, no signs anyone had been under there recently. They sealed the hatch again, this time with screws, and told her it was probably pipes or maybe even a cat that had gotten in and out before they arrived. Melissa didn't argue, but I could tell she didn't believe it. After the officers cleared the scene, I logged the call and tried to shake it off. But it stuck with me. Not because we found nothing. That happens more than people think. But because of something she said right before we hung up. She didn't say it to me. She said it to herself, like it slipped out without her meaning to. Quiet, barely audible. She stopped crying when they got here. I didn't respond, just let the silence sit. And then she added, "She's waiting." I ended the call, but for the rest of the night, I kept thinking about that crawl space. About how sound travels through dirt. About how something could be under you and you'd never really know until it wanted you to. The first call had been strange enough. But you can always tell yourself one call is just odd. People hear things. Their minds make patterns out of shadows and pipes and wind. It's when the second call comes in, different voice, different house, same street, that you stop telling yourself it's just one thing. And when the third call hits your headset, you stop telling yourself anything at all. You just listen. It was 2 nights after Mrs. Fletcher's crawlspace call. I was on the late shift again, same half-empty room, same faint hum of computers and the occasional squawk of the radio. My coffee had gone cold, and I was sitting there thinking about how easy it is to drift off in a chair when the call lit up on my screen. The voice was male this time, quieter, not panicked yet. Hi, yeah, this is probably nothing, but there's this sound under my living room floor. It's crying, I think. The line felt heavier somehow. My headset pressed against my ear like it was sealing me in with him. I asked him for the address. He gave it. Same street as Mrs. Fletcher. 6 houses down. My hand froze over the keyboard. "What do you mean by crying?" I asked, try to sound neutral. "It's a woman, I think. It's not loud. More like I can feel it before I hear it. Like it's in the floorboards. She's not calling for help or anything. She's just crying. I don't know how to explain it." I wanted to tell him I'd heard almost the same description before, but protocol said stick to the script. I sent the call out to patrol and told him to stay on the line until they arrived. He kept talking quietly, like if he spoke too loud, the sound might hear him. Sometimes it stops, like mid-breath, then it's just silent. But I swear I can still feel it, like she's still there, just not making noise. By the time officers got there, it had stopped entirely. They checked the crawl space. No one inside. Same as before. The third call came at 3:18 a.m. I was halfway through logging the earlier report when the phone rang again. A woman's voice this time. Younger. Nervous, but not panicked. "Yeah, hi. Sorry if this is weird, but there's this sound outside my bedroom? No, under it, maybe? I don't know. It's just moving." I asked her what she meant by moving. It's like, okay, it was on the left side of the room before, and now it sits right under me. Like it slid across the floor. Or under it. And it's crying. It's so faint, but I can tell it's right below me now. She gave her address. Same street. 3 houses down from the guy earlier. I don't believe in patterns at first. You tell yourself it's coincidence. Same street. Sure, maybe some weird plumbing issue, maybe a neighbor's TV vibrating through the floors. But coincidence only works when the details don't match. And these details matched almost word for word. By the fifth call that week, we'd stopped pretending it was nothing. The calls were moving east down the street, house to house, each person describing the same thing: a woman's faint crying coming from under their floor. Sometimes it was under the bedroom, sometimes the living room. Always moving, always getting closer to the next house. Officers kept finding nothing. Crawl spaces, basements, utility lines, empty. Not even animal tracks. One guy swore it was under his kitchen 1 minute. Then by the time he got up the nerve to kneel down and listen, it was under his hallway. Like it was traveling. There's something about hearing the same sound described by so many different voices that gets under your skin. It stops being a sound you've never heard. You start hearing it in your head, even when the line is dead. I catch myself pausing between calls, my mind replaying their descriptions. Soft, wet, a woman's breath hitching, a sound that sinks into the wood instead of echoing through it. When I went home, my apartment felt too quiet. I'd find myself standing in the dark, staring at the carpet, wondering what I'd do if I ever heard that. One night, I got a call from a kid. He couldn't have been more than 12. His voice was high and tight, trying not to cry. "It's in my room now," he whispered. "I don't want to move." I asked him where his parents were. "They went to check," he said. "It was under their room before. Now it's under mine." My chest felt cold. "Is it still making the sound?" "Yeah." "What does it sound like?" He was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "It's like when my sister cried after my grandma died." But it's not her. Officers got there fast. They checked the whole property. Nothing. The kid didn't want to sleep in his room anymore. His mom said he'd started putting all his clothes and blankets on the couch, saying the floor in there felt wrong. By then, I'd started keeping a map of the street on my desk. I'd mark each call with a red dot. And sure enough, every few nights, the dots crept down the street like something was crawling under it, house to house. One officer joked about it being a mobile haunting. Another said maybe it was someone digging tunnels at night. But that didn't explain the sound, or why it only ever seemed to happen under bedrooms and living rooms, places where people sat still long enough to notice. The seventh call was the one that stuck with me. It was from a man named Harris. Late 50s, lived alone. He didn't sound scared. He sounded angry. "It's under me right now," he said, his voice flat. "And I don't want to hear." I started to run through the usual questions, but he cut me off. "It's been moving for days. I can tell. The neighbors said something about it, and now it's here. I'm not going to wait for it to move on." "What do you mean by that?" I asked. "I mean, I'm going under there. I got a light. I'm going to find it." I told him to wait for officers, but he didn't answer. There was a long silence on the line, just a faint sound of wind through a half-open door. Then I heard him grunt, like he was lowering himself through a hatch. The beam of his flashlight must have hit dust or insulation, because the next sound was him coughing. And then, faintly, I heard it. Not clearly, not enough to be sure, but something. A wet, shuddering inhale. A low, broken exhale, like someone trying not to be heard while they cried. "Harris, get out from under there," I said. He didn't answer. The sound got sharper, like the microphone was picking up more detail. I thought I heard his knees on gravel, the beam of the flashlight hitting wood. His breathing was heavier now. And then he whispered, "It stopped." "Then get out of there," I said again, my voice sharper than I meant. But he didn't. "It's still here," he said. "It's just not making noise now." The officers arrived 3 minutes later. They found a flashlight lying on its side under the house. No Harris. He turned up the next morning, sitting on his porch, covered in dust. Said he didn't remember coming out. Wouldn't talk about what he saw down there. The calls kept moving. It went past Harris's place, down to the end of the street. Then it stopped for 2 weeks. No more reports. No more crying. I should have felt relieved, but that's not how it works. When something stops, you don't feel safe. You feel like it's looking for a new way in. The last call I took from that street didn't even come from a street. It came from the next block over. A woman said she could hear crying in her basement. I asked her address. She gave it. 2 streets down. I marked it on the map, and I realized it wasn't just moving down that one street. It was moving out. I barely slept after the second night. When I closed my eyes, I kept replaying that sound in my head, the thin, wet sobbing drifting up from the crawl space. Only now it wasn't tied to just one house. It was moving. Every call came in the same way. A shaky voice on the other end, describing that same muffled crying under their floorboards. Always late at night. Always somewhere new. The thing that bothered me most was how close it felt. Not just geographically, close in the way something in your own home feels. You could hear it and almost imagine its breath under your feet. When I got to work, I thought maybe someone in records had already figured it out. Maybe there was some busted sewer vent under that block, or a prank, or some old piping making noises. I wanted a reason. A clean one. Records is in a cramped little office next to dispatch, and they're the ones who dig through blueprints, building permits, all the boring stuff no one thinks about until it's needed. I asked Shelley, one of the older clerks, if she could pull files on the houses where the calls came from. She didn't even look up from her coffee. Give me addresses. I rattled them off from memory. For different houses, all in the same 2-block stretch. Shelley typed with those slow, deliberate keystrokes that make you want to grab the keyboard yourself. A minute later, she frowned. That's weird. I leaned closer. What? She spun the monitor slightly toward me. Every one of these? No basements. None of them. Just slab foundations. Crawl spaces? I asked. She shook her head. Nah, not even that. Built in the 80s. Flat concrete underneath. You'd be lucky to fit your arm under the floor. I stared at the screen, reading the line where it spelled out foundation, slab. But my voice trailed off. Shelley looked at me over her glasses. But what? People are hearing, crying. I said quietly, like saying it louder might make me sound crazy. Pipes, she said. Animals. Wind. You know how it is. But I didn't know how it was, and this wasn't it. I'd heard the calls. I'd been in the first house. Pipes don't sound like a child who's been sobbing for hours. I thanked her and went back to my desk, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. No basements. No crawl spaces. Nowhere for anyone to be hiding. That night, the calls kept coming. Same area, just further down the street. Each one sounded a little more frantic than the last. By midnight, I was already on edge when another call patched through. A man's voice, breathless. It's back. It's under the floor. Oh, God. Sir, calm down. What's your address? He rattled off. A new one. Same street. What are you hearing exactly? I asked, even though I already knew. A pause. Then, softly, like he was trying not to let someone hear him, it's crying again, but slower this time, like it's tired. The hair on my arms lifted. I sent a patrol car. They didn't find anything. The report came back the same way they all had. No signs of forced entry. No basement. Sound could not be confirmed. But something else was happening now. By the third night, the pattern was clear. The sound was moving house to house like it was walking down the block. Each night, it started where it left off and continued in the same direction. I pulled up a satellite map of the street during my shift, tracing its path. At that pace, it would be out of the neighborhood in 2 more nights. I should have been relieved. Instead, the thought of it leaving made me feel worse. Because it meant whatever it was wasn't tied to a single house. It could go anywhere. That morning, I went back to records. This time I asked for maps of the neighborhood from before the houses were built. Shelley gave me a look. You getting into local history now? Just curious, I lied. She dug out an old plat map from the late 70s. Before the development went up, the whole block had been empty fields. But there was something marked right in the center, an outline of a building, long gone now. Any idea what that was? I asked. Shelley squinted. No clue. Looks like an old structure. Maybe a barn. Maybe a house. I stared at the faint shape. It was big. Bigger than any of the homes standing there now. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the old building, about how the sound kept moving in a straight line, like it was following something invisible. Around 11:30 p.m., another call came in, a woman's voice this time, shaky, whispering, "It's here now." "Ma'am, what's here?" The crying. "Oh, God, it's right under my bed." I pulled up her address. My stomach turned. It lined up perfectly with the path I traced. "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. Are you alone in the house?" "Yes, no. I mean," her voice cracked. "It's not just crying now. It's scratching. Slow, like it's trying to get through." My mouth went dry. "I'm sending officers right now," I said. She whispered something else then, something I almost didn't catch. "It's saying something." I froze. What's it saying? But before she could answer, the line went dead. Officers got there within minutes. Same report. Nothing under the house. Nothing in the walls. Only this time, one of them mentioned something odd. When they'd stepped inside, the woman's bedroom floor had felt warm, like a heat source directly beneath it. No furnace, no hot water pipes running that way. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept staring at the map, watching that invisible path in my head, and wondering what would happen when it reached the end of the street. That I don't know what it was about that night that made the air feel heavier. The street was quiet, almost unnaturally so. No wind, no cars passing, not even the hum of a distant TV leaking through an open window. Just stillness. By then, we'd been dealing with this thing for days, the crying under the floorboards. Calls bouncing from one house to the next like it was following some invisible track beneath the ground. Always at night, always moving, and always sounding like it was just a few feet away. City records told us the houses didn't have basements. No crawl spaces either. These were older homes, built on slab foundations. Solid concrete under the floor, no way for anything to get in. But the calls kept coming. That night, the crying had returned. Louder, closer. Neighbors were outside in their robes and jackets, clutching flashlights like they might need them to defend themselves. Faces pale, eyes darting at every shadow. A few had their kids pressed close, holding on to them like the ground might open and swallow them whole. We were supposed to wait for backup before trying anything. But watching those people stand there, knowing every minute they were hearing that sound and getting more desperate, it did something to me. So I told Officer Reed we should try knocking, just to see if there was anything down there. Knocking where? He asked. Under the floor, I said. Maybe it's, I don't know, some kind of animal. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. I'd heard that sound. That wasn't an animal. We started at 1143 East Briar, the house that had called it in first that night. The woman who lived there stood off to the side, arms folded so tightly her knuckles were white. She didn't say a word when we went inside. The crying was clearer indoors, muffled but distinct, like a child somewhere below, calling for help through layers of dirt and wood. It made my stomach knot up. Reed crouched down and rapped his knuckles against the hardwood floor. A hollow thunk, thunk, thunk. We waited, and then 3 knocks came back. They weren't echoes. The timing was too deliberate, too slow. Knock, knock, knock. Reed froze mid-crouch and looked at me, his face pale in the glow from his flashlight. That's not possible, he whispered. I didn't answer. My ears were straining for any other sound, breathing, shuffling, something that would tell me it was just a person messing with us. But all I heard was that faint, wet, broken crying still weaving through the floor. We tried again. Re-knocked twice. 2 knocks came back. The woman in the doorway gasped. She stepped forward, then immediately backed away like she'd gotten too close to a cliff's edge. Do it again, she said, her voice tight. We knocked 3 times. The response came instantly, and that's when the noise started outside. Muffled thumps, faint at first, then growing, like someone knocking back in the houses up and down the street. One after another, then all at once. I can't describe the sound any better than this. It was like the earth itself was answering. We stepped out into the cold night, and I swear I could feel the vibration in my feet. Every house on East Briar, from corner to corner, was knocking. All of them. It wasn't random. It was in unison, a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. Neighbors were screaming now. Some tried to run into the street. Others bolted inside and locked their doors, as if that would keep it out. One man grabbed me by the arm and shouted, "What is it? What's down there?" His voice cracked like he already knew I didn't have an answer. Reed was calling for backup, his voice too fast, stumbling over itself. Dispatch kept asking him to repeat himself. I think even over the radio they could hear the noise. The knocking didn't stop. It got faster. I went back into the first house. I don't even know why. Maybe part of me thought I could catch it in the act, see a shadow slip away. But when I stood there in the living room, looking at that worn patch of hardwood, I realized something. The knocks weren't coming from a single point. They were coming from everywhere beneath me at once. Not under one room. Not even under one house. Under the whole damn street. I backed out. My mouth was dry. My head felt light. Reed was outside, his phone still in hand, but no longer at his ear. He was just staring at the asphalt like he expected it to crack open. The crying had stopped. Only the knocking remained. It kept going for what felt like forever. And then, all at once, silence. No fade. No slowing down. Just gone. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. The kind that feels wrong. People stayed outside for a while, whispering to each other, asking if anyone else had seen something, but no one had. No one could explain how every house had joined in. By the time backup arrived, there was nothing to show them. No sound, no vibration, just a street full of shaken neighbors and two officers who couldn't stop looking at the ground. Later, Reed told me he had a dream that night. He didn't want it at first, but I pushed him to tell me. He said he was lying in his bed, and the floor under him was gone. Not broken, not dug up, just gone. And beneath him was nothing but black, shifting soil. And from somewhere far below, 100 hands were reaching up. When he woke up, his fists were clenched so hard his nails had broken skin. I wish I could say I didn't understand. But I had a dream too. Mine wasn't about hands. It was about eyes. Dozens of them pressed against the underside of the floorboards, watching me through the cracks. Not blinking, not moving, just waiting. And when I woke up, the thing that scared me most wasn't the dream itself. It was that I could still hear knocking. Faint, slow, right under my bed. That I've been a dispatcher for 4 years. In that time, I've heard a lot of voices I'll never forget. Screams so sharp they didn't even sound human. Dead silence with just the sound of someone's breathing, like they were holding the phone against their chest. People who called just to say goodbye. You get used to the strange ones. You learn not to take them home with you. Or at least that's what I thought. It was the night shift, about 2 in the morning. The room was dim, just the hum of the monitors and the occasional click of keyboards. We keep the lights low because it's easier on the eyes when you're staring at screens for 12 hours. I was halfway through a stale cup of coffee when I heard it. Not a ring. Not the usual double beep that signals a call coming through. Just a voice. A kid's voice. It was so faint I thought maybe someone's radio chatter was bleeding through the headsets again. But it wasn't coming from the speakers. It was inside my earpiece, directly in my ear, soft and close like the kid was inches away. Help me. I froze. I glanced at the screen. Nothing was logged. No incoming call. No number. No line activity at all. I tapped the side of the headset, thinking maybe I'd picked up some cross-channel interference. But then the voice came again. Please. I'm stuck. My stomach tightened. Who is this? I asked before I could stop myself. No answer. Just the sound of someone breathing. Light. Shaky. Like they've been crying for a long time. Where are you? A pause. Then, in that same small, cracked voice. I can't get out. It's dark in here. I glanced over at Jen, the other dispatcher on shift. She had her headset off, rubbing her eyes, looking bored. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I didn't say anything. Instead, I tried again. What's your name? Silence. And then the faintest scratching sound, like nails against plastic. It went on for a few seconds, and then the line just went dead. Or maybe it had never been alive to begin with. The screen still showed nothing. No missed call. No drop connection. Nothing at all. I try to shrug it off. We get phantom rings sometimes, glitches in the system, audio bleed from other lines, even pranksters who know how to spoof calls. But something about the tone of that voice. It didn't feel like a prank. It felt real. And it didn't sound like a kid holding a phone. It sounded like a kid inside the headset. Over the next hour, I kept catching it. Not whole sentences, just single words buried under static that wasn't even supposed to be there. Cold, can't move, hurts. Every time I checked the logs. Nothing. Jen noticed me frowning at my screen. You good? She asked. Yeah, I lied. Just tired. Around 3:17 a.m., it happened again, but this time it was clear. No static. No dropouts. Please don't hang up. It was the same boy. Close enough that I could almost feel his breath in my ear. I'm not hanging up, I whispered, not caring how insane I probably sounded to anyone who might be listening. I'm right here. Tell me where you are. I don't know. I was in my room, and then I woke up here. Here? Where's here? A pause. Then, very quietly, the wires. My throat went dry. The what? I think I'm inside the phone. Inside all of them. I can hear them all talking. All the people. But they can't hear me. The words sent a cold pulse through my chest. It was too strange, too vivid, to be some random kid making up a story. I tried to keep my voice steady. Are you in trouble? Is someone with you? Another pause. Yes, he said, almost a whisper. She's here. Who? The lady in the static. The line went silent. I didn't tell anyone. How could I? What would I even say? Hey, my headset is haunted by a child living in the phone lines. Instead, I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. Long shifts, lack of sleep, and too much caffeine can mess with your head. But deep down, I knew. 2 nights later, I was back on shift. Everything was quiet until about 1:42 a.m. when I heard it again. This time, it was just one word. Run. I spun in my chair, looking around the dispatch room like I'd actually see where it was coming from. The other dispatcher on duty, Mark, didn't even glance up from his monitor. I pressed the headset closer. Who are you running from? A hiss of static. Then the boy's voice, urgent now. She's listening. She knows he can hear me. A chill crawled down my back. Who's listening? The static deepened, almost like a low, wet crackle. And under it, I swear I heard something breathing. Slow, measured. Then the faintest sound, like fingernails tapping plastic, came from inside the earpiece. I pulled the headset off. The sound stopped. I spent the rest of the night with the headset just hanging around my neck, half afraid to put it back on. No one else heard a thing. No logs. No evidence. Just me. The third time it happened, I decided to record it. Our system auto-records every call, but since these weren't technically calls, I had to set my phone next to the earpiece and hope for the best. It was 4:09 a.m. The voice came in suddenly, almost like it had been waiting for me to listen. Can't get out. Please. Please help. I swallowed hard. I'm trying. Just tell me where you are. The boy's breathing quickened. I think I'm under the floor. But it's not a floor. It's wires. Everywhere. And they're moving. The way he said moving made my skin prickle. What's moving? The wires. They're wrapping around me. She tells them to. My hand trembled holding the phone near the headset. Who is she? A long, empty pause. Then very softly, you'll hear her soon. And the line, if you can even call it a line, cut out. When I played back the recording later, my stomach sank. The boy's voice was there, faint but clear. But there was something else, too. Underneath his words, there was another voice. Not speaking, humming. A slow, low hum, like someone was pressing their mouth against the line itself. And the worst part? It kept going for a few seconds after the boy disappeared, like it wanted me to know it was still there. I should have told my supervisor. I should have done something. But every time I thought about it, I remembered the boy's warning. She knows you can hear me. And I couldn't shake the feeling that saying it out loud, putting it into the air, would somehow make it worse. That night, when I went home, I unplugged my landline, turned my cell off, sat in the dark, wondering if I'd lost my mind. But when I finally tried to sleep, I dreamed of wires. Tangled black cords wrapping around my wrists, my throat, pulling me into the dark. And somewhere in that dark, a faint, steady hum. By the next shift, I made up my mind to ignore it. If I heard the boy again, I'd hang up, or whatever the equivalent was, and move on. But I didn't get the chance. Because this time, he didn't whisper. He screamed. It blasted through my headset, so loud I almost fell out of my chair. A raw, high-pitched cry that cut off instantly. And then, through the ringing in my ears, I heard her. A woman's voice. Clear, cold, right against my ear. Don't answer him again. The headset went dead, and my call log stayed blank that I didn't sleep after that first whisper. Even though I kept telling myself it could have been static or some weird cross-line interference, my brain didn't buy it. It wasn't just a sound. It was aimed at me, like whoever it was had leaned forward, lips almost brushing my ear through the headset. And that voice, so thin, so fragile, didn't feel like something that had traveled across wires. It felt right there. I got home just after 3 a.m. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of my fridge. I tried brushing my teeth and getting ready for bed like normal, but my reflection wouldn't stop looking over my shoulder in the mirror. It wasn't paranoia exactly, more like a presence. That tiny breath of sound had left something in me, like it was still curling in my ear, refusing to fade. I didn't even bother turning off the TV when I finally sat on the couch. I just kept the blue glow on until the sun came up, then dragged myself back to work. Dispatch was unusually dead the next night. The regular overnight crew was there. Evan sipping from his massive thermos, Marta knitting between calls, and me trying not to yawn into the mic. For the first couple of hours, nothing. No drunks, no alarms, no domestic fights spilling into the street. Just stillness. Then, at exactly 1:13 a.m., my headset clicked. Not ringing, not beeping, just clicked, like someone had pressed a line open without actually calling in. I froze, watching the monitor. No number, no record of any incoming call. Then, the same faint whisper. Help me. My skin tightened instantly. It was him, the boy from last night. Same fragile tone, like every word was an effort. I swallowed. Hello? Who is this? He didn't answer. Instead, I heard another sound. Distant. Electronic. It was ringing. Not my headset. Not the main dispatch lines. It was coming from somewhere in the building. I pulled my mic up and glanced at Marta. Do you hear that? She looked up from her knitting, frowning. Hear what? The ringing kept going. I stood up, yanking the headset cord free, but the sound didn't fade. If anything, it got louder as I stepped away from my station. It was coming from one of the unused desks in the far corner, a phone we hadn't powered on in months. The little green LED was dark. It shouldn't even have had power. Still it rang. Old-fashioned, mechanical. Not our normal electronic tone. I reached for it, but as soon as my hand touched the receiver, it stopped. Silence. I glanced back at my station. My headset, still lying on the desk, was faintly whispering. Follow it. That's when the second phone started ringing. This one was on the opposite side of the room. Another unused line. I walked toward it slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. The sound was wrong. It didn't echo right in the room. It was too close, too direct, like it was ringing inside my head as much as through the air. While I was only a foot away, it cut off. Across the room, another phone started. Then another, and another. Every time I got close to one, it would die, only for another to start somewhere else. It was like the sound was leading me, pulling me through the room in jagged little hops. Follow the ring. The whisper repeated in my headset. I didn't even remember putting it back on, but somehow it was on my head again, cord trailing behind me. I kept moving, kept chasing the sound, until it pulled me toward the stairwell. The basement was cold. We didn't use it much except for old file storage and broken equipment. The concrete walls were unpainted, the light fixtures buzzing faintly overhead. Halfway down the steps, the ringing stopped. For a moment, the silence was so deep I could hear my own blood in my ears. Then, from somewhere deeper in the basement, another phone began to ring. This one was different. Lower tone. Slower. I followed it through rows of dusty metal shelves, past collapsed stacks of cardboard boxes. The smell of damp paper was heavy in the air. At the very back, against the far wall, sat an ancient rotary phone. Yellowed with age, the kind you'd see in old police movies. It was ringing steadily, receiver vibrating against the base. I lifted it slowly. Hello. For a second, nothing, just faint static. Then, the boy's voice, right against my ear again. You're close. I wanted to ask close to what, but the line went dead. No click, no hang up, just absence. I set the receiver down, my hands trembling slightly. When I turned to leave, something in the corner of the room caught my eye. The phone's cord wasn't plugged into anything. Back upstairs, I didn't tell anyone. Not Marta, not Evan, not even the supervisor. I told myself it was just some kind of equipment glitch, maybe a crossed wire from the old line still buried in the building. But the next night, it happened again. Only this time, the rings weren't just inside the dispatch room. It started in the bathroom. I'd gone in around 2 a.m., splashed some water on my face, and was drying my hands when a phone rang from somewhere behind the mirror. It was the same too-close sound, vibrating in the air without echo. I pulled the mirror open, nothing but shelves of cheap paper towels and disinfectant spray. Then the ring cut off, and from outside, in the hallway, another phone started. I stepped out, heart pounding. This one came from the break room. I followed it in, stopped cold. Every single phone in the building was ringing at once. Desks, wall mounts, even the old, dusty one I'd found in the basement. All of them hammering out different tones in chaotic unison. The sound was unbearable, like a swarm of metal insects shrieking inside my skull. I ripped my headset off, but the sound didn't fade. I backed toward the door, and all at once they stopped. Every single one. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise had. And then, from the nearest phone, a whisper so quiet I almost missed it. Keep following. I don't know why I listened. I should have walked away. Should have told someone. But some part of me needed to know, so I followed. Phone to phone, room to room, down the stairs, out into the lobby, across the tiled floor. The sound was erratic but deliberate, like a trail of breadcrumbs made out of noise. It led me to the front doors. And then it stopped. I stood there for a long moment, staring out at the empty street. Finally, one last phone rang. It was behind me, at my own desk. When I picked it up, there was no voice this time, just a faint crackle. Then, buried in the static, I could make out something that sounded like breathing. Slow, uneven, and underneath it, the tiniest scrape, like fingernails against glass. I stood there, not breathing, until the line went dead. When I set the receiver down, I realized my handprint was fogged into the plastic. The phone had been cold when I picked it up. I wish I could say I went home that night and left it alone. But the truth is, I started waiting for it. The ring. The whisper. The next step. Because whatever this was, it wasn't done with me yet that I didn't know what time it was when it started. I'd stopped checking the clock by then. The hours had blurred into one long stretch of ringing phones and whispers bleeding through the wires. I've been on edge since the second chapter of this nightmare, since the moment I realized the boy wasn't tied to a single number. He could move, jump, hop between phones like something alive inside the lines. Every time his voice came through, another phone would ring from somewhere it shouldn't. But tonight was different. The headset was warm against my ear. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. My shift was crawling toward the heavy stillness that comes when the city is asleep. That's when the phones usually rest too, when calls are slow, predictable, but then static, like breathing, but thinner, like someone inhaling through water. Don't hang up. It was him, the kid. His voice was barely there, so faint I thought it might be a trick of my ears. My first instinct was to check the call log to see what number he'd come from this time. Only there was no call. The line was dead on the board. No lights. No indicators. It was like talking to a ghost that had somehow slipped past every piece of tech we had. Don't hang up, he said again, more urgent this time. My throat went dry. Who are you? There was a pause. A soft hiss of static. I can't fall. Not again. That word, fall, twisted something in my chest. Not like falling downstairs. The way he said it, it was deeper. A kind of falling that sounded endless. What do you mean? Where are you? I asked. Silence. Then, faintly, I think I'm under everything. The hair on my arms prickled. I didn't know what that meant, but it made me imagine him trapped in some black void beneath the city. My brain wanted to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank, maybe a messed up joke. But the way he breathed into the line didn't feel like a joke. I can't hold on if you hang up, he whispered. I looked around the empty dispatch room. My coworkers had all gone for their smoke break. I was alone. I adjusted the headset. Okay, I won't hang up. That was the moment I made a mistake. Because in this job, you're taught to control the call, to set boundaries. But I let him set the rules. A faint ring sounded somewhere in the building. Not from my console, somewhere else. You have to follow, the boy said. The line moves. You have to follow it. I hesitated. What do you mean, follow it? Another ring. Louder this time, from one of the landlines in the break room. I swallowed. If I move, I have to put you on hold. No, don't. Please. I'll fall. I don't know why I listened. Maybe because his voice wasn't commanding, it was breaking. Like a kid who's been calling for help so long, he's starting to lose hope. I grabbed the spare cordless from the desk and followed the sound. My shoes squeaked faintly against the wax tile. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the same way they always do when you notice them too much. The break room was dark. I reached for the wall switch, but froze. The phone on the wall was ringing. Not a normal ring, slower, drawn out, like it was dragging each chime through molasses. I picked it up. The boy's voice came through immediately, close to my ear like he was standing right beside me. You found me. I never lost you, I said before thinking. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, quietly, it's getting harder to hold on. Feels like the floor's opening. I didn't know how to respond. My brain kept telling me this wasn't real, that I was speaking to some glitch or recording. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I hung up, something real would happen to him. "What's your name?" I asked again. "I don't know anymore." The cordless in my other hand beeped, low battery. And then another ring. Faint, distant. "You have to follow," the boy said again. "I can't just leave the station," I told him. "You don't have to. The ring will come to you." And then I heard it. Behind me. I turned slowly, the hairs on my neck stiff. Somewhere down the hallway, another phone had started ringing. The cord from the break room phone stretched tight as I moved toward the hall. The sound was getting closer, like the ring itself was traveling through the air. I stopped at the console room. The phone by the far wall was lit. I picked it up. "Don't hang up," the boy breathed, almost sobbing now. My pulse thudded in my ears. "I'm still here." Good, good. "It's dark. It's so dark down here." I wanted to ask where is here again, but I knew it would get me nowhere. So I asked something else. "What happens if you fall?" A pause. "You stop being a person." That answer chilled me more than if he'd said you die. There was something worse in the way he phrased it. The cordless beeped again. I checked its display. Battery almost gone. Another ring, faint but clear, came from somewhere deep in the archives room. I shouldn't have gone in there. The archives are just rows of dusty shelves with old logs, box tapes, and spare equipment. But the sound was pulling me like a rope around my chest. I stepped inside. The phone on the back wall, one we never use, was ringing. I picked it up. The static was heavier now. It felt like the boy was speaking from inside a storm. "Don't let go," he said. "Promise me." "I promise." The line hissed. I could almost swear I heard other voices in the background, faint and distorted. "Do you hear them?" he asked. "Who?" "They're waiting. If I fall, they'll catch me." That sent a cold knot into my stomach. Another ring started somewhere else in the building, but this time, I didn't want to follow it. "Do I have to?" I asked. "Yes," the boy said, his tone shifting, not demanding but desperate. "If you stop, they'll take me." I swallowed hard and followed the sound again, winding through dim hallways lit only by emergency lights now. I hadn't noticed the main fluorescents flicker out. Each phone I picked up felt colder than the last. His voice was weakening. And always, "Don't hang up." Finally, I reached the phone in the storage bay. I lifted it to my ear. The boy's whisper was almost gone. "It's close. I'm slipping." I pressed the receiver tight. "I'm here. Just stay with me." And then, silence. The static died. I waited. My own breath felt too loud. Then, faintly, I think I fell. My chest tightened. But before I could speak, the line went dead. And every phone in the building started ringing at once that I thought cutting the trunk line would fix everything. The techs arrived early that morning. 2 men in matching navy jackets with a faded company logo stitched on the chest. Their breath fogged in the cold air as they unloaded tools and coils of thick black cable. One of them, a tall, heavy-set guy with calloused hands, kept asking questions I couldn't answer. "How long's it been happening?" "Same number every time." "Could be a loop, could be crossed wires." I didn't know how to explain that it wasn't any of those things. I didn't know how to explain him. They moved fast, tracing the main line through the dusty utility room, cutting the tie straps that held it against the wall. When the first pair of cutters closed over that thick cable, I swear I felt it in my chest, like someone had snapped a bone that wasn't theirs to break. And then, silence. No static hum in the earpiece. No phantom ring echoing through the hallways. Just the sound of the techs coiling the dead cable and tossing it into a bin. One of them looked at me. "That's it. You're off the grid until the new trunks run. No calls in, no calls out." It should have felt like relief. It didn't, because the quiet wasn't right. I walked back to my desk in the dispatch room, the carpet swallowing my footsteps. The empty switchboard sat in front of me, its tiny indicator lights all dark. My coffee had gone cold. I stared at the blank screen where call IDs used to scroll. No boy, no voice. I thought maybe I could breathe again. It lasted 9 minutes. That's when the phone rang. A single chime at first. Soft, almost shy. Then it rang again, louder, sharper, the sound slicing right through the stillness. My hands didn't move at first. This wasn't possible. The trunk was gone. The line was physically cut. The phone was a dead object. It rang a third time. I reached for the receiver without even meaning to. My hand felt like it belonged to someone else. I pressed it to my ear. "You didn't cut me off." The voice was trembling, wet. He was crying, really crying this time, the kind where your words hitch between sobs. "I thought you were going to," he said. "I thought you were going to let me fall." I swallowed hard. We cut the line, kid. There's no way you could be. You can't cut where I am." My mouth went dry. There was a muffled sound on his end, like he was cupping the mouthpiece and whispering to someone else. Or maybe to himself. "I thought if I stayed talking, I'd stay here," he said. "But it's pulling harder now." "What's pulling?" I asked. Silence. I could hear his breath. "I don't want to go down there," he whispered. The word there made my stomach twist, like he was pointing somewhere I couldn't see, but could still feel in my bones. "You said you wouldn't hang up," he added. "I'm not hanging up," I said quickly. "I know, but they are." I almost asked who they were, but before I could, the line started to fade. Not with static, but with this hollow, low-pressure sound, like the air between us was thinning out. My ear popped. "You're fading," I said. "Don't let me go." And then he screamed. It wasn't loud. That was the worst part. It was thin, distant, like I was hearing it through layers of concrete. The line went dead. The tech swore the phone couldn't possibly work. They even opened it up on the spot, showing me the empty socket where the cable should have been. I didn't argue. What was I supposed to say? That a boy who doesn't exist keeps calling me from somewhere you can't cut a wire to? The second call came 2 hours later. This time, I answered before the first ring finished. He wasn't crying as much, but his voice was hoarse, like he'd been screaming for a long time. "I almost slipped," he said. "I'm so tired." "Where are you?" I asked. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." A pause. Then, "It's like a ladder. Only it's not going up. And the rungs aren't real. They're just pieces. You have to grab them before they're gone." "And what's at the bottom?" He didn't answer. I thought I heard water. Not the steady kind. More like the churning rush of something that didn't care if you were in its way. "I can't feel my legs anymore," he said quietly. "If I fall, I think I'll fall forever." Something in my chest broke hearing that. "Stay on the phone," I said. "Don't move, just talk to me. That's what keeps me here," he murmured. "But every time you blink, the pieces go away faster." I didn't know what to say to that. My eyes started to sting. "You blinked," he said. I swear I didn't. The sound faded again. Not gone, but farther, like he was slipping away. I yelled into the receiver, told him to hold on, told him to keep talking. "I can't," he said. "They don't like when I talk to you." And then the call ended. The rest of the day, the techs worked in silence. I sat at my desk, pretending to file reports, my ears straining for the next ring. Every so often, I thought I heard one, a faint bell in the walls. But when I picked up, there was nothing. The final call came just after sunset. No ring this time. The phone just clicked. He was already speaking when I lifted it. "They're close now," he said. "If they take me, I won't be able to call anymore." "Who's close?" "You won't remember." I almost told him I'd remember forever, but the way he said it made me stop. Like he knew something about me that I didn't. "I don't want to be alone," he whispered. "You're not alone. I'm right here." "Not yet," he said. And then, for the first time, I heard them. It was faint, too faint to make sense of at first, like a chorus of voices behind a wall. Not speaking, not singing, just moving, as if they were circling him. "You have to cut me off," he said suddenly. "What?" "If I go with them while I'm still talking to you, you'll hear it. And if you hear it, you'll come here too." My hand started to shake. "I can't hang up on you. You have to." I promised I wouldn't. "Please." His voice cracked so hard it didn't sound like a boy anymore. It sounded old, ragged, like he'd been begging for longer than I could understand. Something in the background was getting louder. Not footsteps, not breathing, just this low, dragging sound, like fabric across stone. "Please," he said again, softer this time. My thumb hovered over the cradle. "I'm sorry," I whispered, and I hung up. The silence after was unbearable. I sat there with my hand still on the receiver, waiting for something, anything to happen. But nothing did. No more calls came that night. The techs finished their work and left. The building was quiet again. I went home, but I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ladder he described, stretching downward into dark water. I kept thinking about what he'd said, about blinking, about remembering. I don't remember what his voice sounds like anymore. I don't remember why I'm so afraid of my phone ringing. But sometimes, when it's very quiet, I think I hear water rushing far below me. And it's getting closer that I've worked the night shift at the county dispatch center for 7 years. Long enough to know the difference between a bad call and a wrong call. Bad calls are the usual. Accidents, fights, medical emergencies that spiral in seconds. They're heavy, but they make sense. You know where you're sending help. You know what's happening. Wrong calls, they stick to you. They make your skin tighten, like your body knows something's off before your mind can put it into words. They follow you home, sit in the corners of your living room, and wait. It was 2:14 a.m. when the wrong call came in. The center was quiet, the kind of quiet where the hum of the fluorescent lights seems louder than your breathing. Marla, the other dispatcher on duty, was flipping through a paperback novel. I was nursing my third coffee, trying to stay alert, when the phone lit up. Line 3. Unknown number. I put on my headset. County dispatch. What's your emergency? Nothing. I checked the screen. The call had connected. Hello. Can you hear me? A sound came through. Not words, but breathing. Slow. Measured. Not panicked. You get prank calls on night shift sometimes, but this didn't have that smug edge. This breathing sounded careful, like whoever it was didn't want to be heard by someone else. Sir? Ma'am? I need you to speak so I can help you. A whisper, so faint I had to hold my breath to hear it. He's above me. I sat up straighter. Okay. Can you tell me your name? The voice hesitated. I can't be loud. I motioned for Marla to mute her audiobook and listen in. She frowned, slid her chair closer. All right. I kept my voice low, steady. You don't have to be loud. Just tell me, where are you? Another pause. Then, the same whisper. In the crawl space. My brain started sorting through mental maps of houses I'd been in. Crawl space meant ground level or basement ceiling space. Usually only big enough to store wiring, insulation, maybe ductwork. Not somewhere you'd hang out unless you had no other choice. What's your address? A muffled shuffle on the other end, like the phone was being turned. Then I don't know. My stomach sank. Are you in a house? Apartment? Somewhere you can describe? I was walking, he whispered. Then I woke up here. A trace of static cracked in the line. I could hear him breathing faster now. And you said someone is above you? A tiny click of his tongue, like he was gathering courage. Not someone, he whispered. Then, after a shaky inhale, breathing, a mouth creeped out to Marla. She didn't smile. Do you hear it right now? I asked. Yes. I leaned forward, head set tight against my ear. Can you hold the phone up so I can hear? There was rustling, then a dead silence, followed by the faintest, drawn-out inhale, and then an exhale. It was slow, too slow for normal breathing. Like whoever, whatever, was making it didn't need a rush. I realized my own breathing had matched its pace without meaning to. I broke it off with a short gasp. Okay, I said quietly. I heard it. Is there any light where you are? No, just what above me. How close is the breathing? A pause. Then, in a voice even smaller than before. If I push up, I think I'll touch it. My heart thudded once hard. I took a second before speaking. All right, don't push up. Stay exactly where you are. A crackle in the line, like something brushing against the phone's microphone. Then I heard him whisper again, this time not to me. Shoo. It wasn't directed at me. It was aimed upward. I typed as I talked. I'm going to send help, but I need something, anything, about where you might be. I don't know. His voice was breaking. It smells bad. What kind of bad? Like wet dirt. And something sweet. Rotten sweet. I kept typing, running keywords through our system. Missing persons, reported trespassing, abandoned properties in the area. Nothing was matching yet. Listen, I said, you called from a phone. Can you look at it? Tell me what it says on the screen. I can't, it's dark. I felt the buttons until it rang. Buttons. Not a touch screen. It was an old phone, which meant maybe no GPS. I switched tactics. When you woke up there, were you lying down? Yes. Was anyone with you? No. I thought about the breathing above him. You said he's above me. Why? There was silence long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, because I hear the weight. He moves. I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Moves? Yes. Like knees and hands crawling. The hairs on my arms stood up. Marla gave me a look that said I'm hearing this too, and I hate it. I tried to keep my voice calm. Has he done anything? Try to reach you. Not yet. I nodded to Marla, motioning her to get the tech team to trace the call. She started dialing. The man whispered again. He stops sometimes like he's listening for me. I realized I was holding my breath again. Do you hear him right now? Silence. Then, yes. The breathing I'd heard before was louder now, not in volume, but in presence. It filled the space between us like static that wasn't static. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. I typed to the text, trace now. Priority 1. Then the caller whispered, it's closer. How much closer? He didn't answer at first. I heard faint wood creak in the background, then almost too soft to catch. He's right over me. My throat felt tight. Okay, you're doing great. Just stay quiet. Help is on the way. But I didn't know if that was true. The text faces weren't encouraging. What's your name? I asked again. He hesitated. Then, Eli. All right, Eli. Keep talking to me, okay? Another creak from above him. It sounded heavier this time, like something shifting its full weight. Eli, I whispered. Are you safe right now? I don't think so. Then the line went dead. My whole body went cold. We tried calling back. No ring, no voicemail, nothing. The text said they'd been mid-trace when it cut off, but the signal had bounced through too many dead relays to lock down. I sat there with my headset in my hands, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen, the faint echo of that breathing still in my head. I told myself maybe it was some old crawl space in an abandoned house. Maybe a homeless man was squatting there. Maybe Eli had wandered and drunk or disoriented. But the part of me that's learned to listen, the part that knows the difference between bad and wrong calls, knew better. Because in all my years, I'd never heard breathing that slow. Not from person. And not that close. I didn't sleep at all after that first call. Even when the night shift ended, my mind wouldn't shut off. I lay in bed, staring at the faint cracks in my ceiling, hearing that whisper over and over again. The slow breathing. The way his voice quivered. Not because he was in pain, but because he was waiting for something. I told myself it was just another strange call. We get them sometimes, confused people, people on bad drugs, people playing sick pranks. But this one was different. The fear in his voice had weight. Like he'd been carrying it for hours before he found the courage to dial. When I came back the next night, the console felt colder than usual under my fingers. Dispatch rooms have their own rhythm. Low conversations, keyboard clicks, the faint hum of monitors, but every sound felt sharper, too loud. I kept thinking about the crawl space. How he said it was pitch dark until he could hear something breathing right above him. Half an hour into my shift, the call board lit up. Same number. I stared at it for a second longer than I should have before answering. 911. What's your emergency? The voice came through in a whisper, so quiet I had to press the headset tighter against my ear. She's right above me. My heart skipped. Sir, is this the same location you called from last night? A pause. A faint rustle, like fabric against wood. I can see her hair. I gripped the desk. Her hair. It's hanging through the boards, he whispered. It wasn't there before. I can see the light from above, just a little crack, but her hair's moving. I swallowed hard. My training told me to keep control of the call. Get the location. Keep him talking. But my mind was already building the picture. A narrow space, boards above, strands of hair swaying in dim light. Sir, I need you to focus. We couldn't find your location last time. Can you tell me where you are? I don't know, he said. I woke up here. My pen scratched uselessly across the notepad. You woke up there? Were you taken? I think someone put me here. But I haven't heard them leave. She's been moving. The line went quiet except for his breathing. Slow. Careful. What does she look like? I asked, before realizing how pointless the question was. He could only see her hair. It's black. Long, dirty. His voice trembled. It's like she's lying on the floor above me. But she's not moving like a person lying down. She keeps sliding. Back and forth. A faint creak came through the line. It didn't sound like interference. It sounded like weight shifting on old wood. Sir, stay on the line with me. I'm going to get units out there. I already told them, he said. They came. They knocked. But they couldn't find me. They didn't hear her. My stomach nodded. I pulled up the previous call's report. I hadn't realized how fast my hands were moving until I almost knocked my headset off. The notes were short. Caller reports trapped in crawl space. Units dispatched. Unable to locate address. No contact made on arrival. It wasn't even a real address, just a coordinate ping that didn't match any street. Sir, I want you to tell me exactly what you see now. Another pause. She's closer. How close? I can see her fingers now. They're curled over the boards. She's just holding them there. I shivered. Is she saying anything? No. The call went so silent that for a moment I thought I'd lost him. Then I heard it, faint, muffled. Not breathing. Not footsteps. Something like a wet sound. What was that? I asked. She's pulling her hair through, he whispered. Like one strand at a time. Every part of me wanted to tell him to move, to bang on the boards, to do something, but he sounded like he was barely holding himself together, and if I pushed too hard, I was afraid he'd panic. Sir, I need to know if you can move toward the light. Can you push the boards? He let out a low, humorless laugh. I can't even turn around. I think the walls are tighter than they were yesterday. The tech monitoring the line at the next desk was already watching me. I gave him the hand signal for trace, but he shook his head. Ping's dead, he mouthed. I kept my voice steady. I'm here with you. I'm not going anywhere. Can you hear anything else besides her? He breathed in sharply. Yes, there's someone else up there. A man. He's talking to her, but I can't hear the words. That was the first time my own breathing went uneven. Sir, you need to tell me. Does it sound like he's hurting her? No. It sounds like he's telling her something. Over and over. What's she doing now? A pause. She's gone. The line stayed open. His breathing was quick now, not careful anymore. Where did she go? She just slid back. The light's gone. It's dark again. I heard another noise then, faint like something brushing past the phone on his end. Sir, are you still there? Yes. What's happening? There was a long silence before he whispered. She's underneath me now. My hand went cold around the pen. She's under you? How? The line cut. I tried redialing, but the call wouldn't go through. The number was gone from the system like it had never existed. I sat there for a moment, staring at the empty call log, feeling my own heartbeat in my ears. I wanted to tell myself it was just a glitch, just another strange night. But I couldn't shake the sound of that creak. The strands of hair. The voice saying she was underneath him now. Because if she could move from above to below without him hearing it, then she wasn't crawling. She was waiting that I'd been staring at the blinking cursor for a while, listening to the faint hum of the dispatch center's overhead lights. After what happened last night with the man in the crawl space, I've been trying not to think about it, but the mind doesn't exactly take orders. You can't unhear someone whispering, she's right above me, in that broken, shaky voice. You can't unpicture it. We never got him out. That's the part that's been rotting in my head since the shift ended. The call just dropped. We sent a unit to the address he gave, but there was no follow-up, no closure. That happens sometimes, bad reception, prank calls, false alarms. But this didn't feel like any of those. Still, I had to push it down. There were other calls, other emergencies. And that's the rule in dispatch. You don't take yesterday into today. Except, sometimes yesterday refuses to stay there. It was near the end of my shift when the line lit up again. The caller ID read unknown. My stomach nodded. I picked it up. 911. What's your emergency? A long pause. Just static. Then, it's me. The voice was barely audible. Hoarse. The same voice from last night. I felt my whole body tense. Sir, we lost your call yesterday. Are you? She's still here. I swallowed. My throat was dry. Can you confirm your location? Same place, he whispered. Still in the crawl space. I can't move. I glanced at my supervisor's desk. She was busy on another call, scribbling notes. All right, I said, keeping my voice steady. Units are on the way, but I need you to tell me exactly where you are. Street, house number, anything. There was a faint creak in the background, like wood shifting under weight. Then he said, I can see light. Between the boards. But I don't recognize it. Not anymore. Light from outside? No, he breathed. From above. It's not daylight. It's like yellow. Sick yellow. I started typing. Is the woman still there? He made a sound that wasn't quite a yes, but close. She's right above me. Hair's touching my face now. Smells like wet leaves. The image made me shiver. I could see it in my head, strands of damp, matted hair brushing his skin in the dark. Okay, we're tracing the call, I told him. Stay with me. It took less than a minute for the location to pop up on my screen, but my eyes locked on it, not quite believing. The map showed a pin in the middle of the old quarry, the one that had been shut down for almost 30 years. There were no houses there, no buildings, just flat, scarred earth and deep, water-filled pits. I radioed it in to the nearest patrol. They hesitated. I could hear it in their voices. Dispatch, confirm address. I read it back. Silence. Then, that's the quarry. Confirmed. That's where the call is pinging from. Another pause. We're en route. I went back to the phone. Sir, help is coming. Can you describe what's around you? Dark, he whispered. Wood above me. Dirt below. My knees are in the dirt. I think it's wet. My hands too. Wet with what? Can you smell it? Another creak overhead. Smells like rust. Rust. I didn't like that answer. The patrol car reached the quarry in under 10 minutes. I could hear the wind on their radio feed. It was open land, cold, exposed. We're at coordinates, one of the officers said. No structures in sight. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Sir, they're right there. Can you hear sirens? He didn't respond. Sir, they're not here, he said finally. I'd hear them. I relayed to the officers. He says he can't hear you. They scan the area. Negative on any buildings or crawl spaces. Closest structure's half a mile away, an old pump shed. My skin crawled. I asked the caller, do you hear anything outside your space? Wind? Water? Just her. What's she doing now? A shaky breath. She's not moving anymore. But she's whispering. What is she saying? The line went fuzzy. His voice dropped to almost nothing. She says she knows you. I froze. Me? She said my name. She didn't say it. But she means you. I sat there, my headset suddenly too heavy. The officers were still reporting. Dispatch. We've got nothing out here. No sign of anyone. I could hear the quarry wind rushing past their mics. Empty space. I turned my attention back to the caller. Sir, you need to tell me how you got there. The quarry is miles from any town. His breathing grew uneven. I don't remember walking here. I remember my bed, then dirt, then boards above me, then her. The line popped and cracked with static. I thought we'd lose him again. I think, he said slowly, I've been here longer than I thought. That stuck in my head longer than I thought. Sir, I need you to focus. Try to push up on the boards. Can you break them? There was a sound like a weak shove against wood. No, too heavy. Okay, try calling out. Yell. I don't want to, he said quickly. Why not? She'll know I'm trying to leave. The officers decided to sweep the pump shed just in case. I listened to their boots crunching over gravel. They opened the door. It groaned loud enough for me to hear over the open channel. Empty, one reported. Just rusted pipes, old tools. I stared at the map. The ping hadn't moved. The quarry was nothing but an echo of industry, dust, wind, and forgotten machinery. There was nowhere for him to be. Sir, I said quietly, what's your full name? He hesitated. I used to know it. You don't remember your name? It doesn't matter here. Something about the way he said here made me feel cold. What does matter? I asked. Listening, he whispered. She want me to listen. The line went silent for almost a minute. I thought we'd lost him again when I heard it, faint, just on the edge of the audio. A woman's voice. Not speaking words. Just humming. Low, slow, and tuneless. It didn't sound like any lullaby I'd ever heard. I told the officers, hold position. I'm still on with him. Then, to the caller, is she humming right now? Yes. What is she doing while she hums? Looking down. How do you know she's looking? I can feel it, he breathed. The hum continued for another 30 seconds, then stopped. The silence afterward was somehow worse. Then he said, almost to himself, she's not breathing anymore. I felt my pulse in my ears. What do you mean? I can't hear her breath. Just mine. Sir, we're going to keep trying to locate. You won't. His voice was flat now. Because I'm not supposed to leave. Neither is she. The call ended. Not dropped. Ended. The quarry units searched until sunset. Nothing. No footprints. No sign of disturbance. No trace of a person. But the GPS ping stayed exactly where it was until it didn't. At 8:14 p.m., it vanished completely. I drove home that night thinking about the boards, the light, the hair, the smell of rust. And the part that I didn't tell anyone, the hum. I could still hear it. Even now, I still had the phone in my hand when the sound started. It was quiet at first, just a faint scuff like fabric brushing against wood, but grew louder. He'd been talking only seconds before, his voice frantic, words spilling out in uneven bursts. Then, without warning, they stopped. All I heard was that dragging sound. Wet. Heavy. It was the kind of noise you could feel in your stomach like it had weight to it. I froze. My mouth went dry. Sir? My voice came out thin, shaky. No answer. I didn't even realize I was gripping the headset so tightly until I felt the hard edge biting into my palm. My other hand hovered over the keyboard, ready to type anything, some note, some detail, but there was nothing to write except the obvious. Unknown sound online. Caller silent. The dragging grew slower. I could hear it scraping, pulling across what I guessed was the floor above him. Between each drag was a pause, just long enough for me to imagine something shifting its weight, adjusting, leaning down toward the boards. Hello? Can you hear me? Still nothing. I leaned closer into the headset, as if my body language could push my voice through the wire, force it into wherever he was. My mind kept flashing back to what he'd said earlier, how he could see her hair through the cracks. Long, dark strands dangling between the boards, swaying slightly when she moved. It was ridiculous, but I kept picturing her face pressed close to the wood, staring down at him. The sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the dragging. It felt sharp, like the moment right before glass shatters. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. My ears strained so hard for another noise that I could hear my own heartbeat in my head. Then, finally he spoke. But it wasn't the same voice. It was a whisper. Slow. Careful. She's under... And that's when something changed in the line. I could hear him, but it was like he'd turned away from the phone, speaking sideways, almost as if someone else was in the room with him. I sat forward. Sir, I need you to speak up. Where are you right now? What's happening? That dragging sound returned, closer now, with a wet slap at the end of each pull, like something heavy leaving streaks behind it. And under it all, something else, something faint, almost like breathing, but the rhythm was wrong. It didn't rise and fall evenly. It hissed in long, uneven pulls, as though every breath took more effort than the last. Then the phone shifted in his hand. I heard the hollow clunk of plastic against something hard, then fabric brushing the receiver. He must have moved it closer again because his voice came back, this time loud enough to send a chill straight through me. She's not above me anymore. He swallowed audibly, breath hitching. She's right here. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, his words were drowned out. The dragging became a single, long pull, slow and wet, and then a sound I'll never forget. It was like something tearing, not fabric, not wood, something softer. Flesh. The call erupted in a burst of static so loud I flinched. I yanked the headset slightly away from my ear, but I couldn't make myself hang up. The static wasn't steady. It pulsed, dipped, almost like it was breathing too. Then it cut out entirely. Just dead air. I stared at the console. The call timer kept going for a second longer, then stopped. Disconnected. My own reflection stared back at me in the darkened monitor screen. Pale. Eyes too wide. I realized I was still gripping the headset, my knuckles bone white. I don't know how long I sat there before I moved. I typed a final note into the call log, hands trembling so badly that the words came out messy and uneven. I kept replaying the last seconds in my head, trying to convince myself I'd imagined that sound, that I'd mistaken it for something else. Anything else. The unit I dispatched radioed in shortly after. They'd arrived at the address. Except there wasn't an address. There was nothing there at all, just the quarry. They searched it anyway. Found no footprints, no sign of anyone living or hiding there. The only thing they reported was a patch of disturbed dirt near one of the older sections, like something had been dragged through it recently. No prints, no blood, Just a faint, dark trail leading toward the deepest part of the quarry. It ended at a pool of still water. The search stopped at nightfall. I knew it would. That place swallows light, even in the day. At night, it's like staring into a pit that has no bottom. I told my supervisor exactly what I'd heard. The dragging, the whisper, the tearing. They nodded, wrote it down, but I could tell they didn't believe me. Not really. To them, it was just another call gone cold. But I can't stop hearing it. Sometimes when I'm home, late at night, I'll turn on the faucet in the kitchen and stand there, waiting. And if the house is quiet enough, I swear I can hear it under the sound of the water. That same wet dragging, slow and deliberate. Once or twice, I've woken up to the sound of wood creaking above me. Just a single step, then silence. And every time, I remember the way his voice sounded in those last moments. She's not above me anymore. She's right here. It's been weeks since that night, and still, I keep thinking about the boards, about the cracks between them, about how easy it would be for something or someone to slip between them without a sound, and how sometimes, when you think you know where the danger is, you're already too late. That I've worked night dispatch for 7 years now, and you learn quickly that rural emergencies feel different from city ones. The city hums. Even at 2 in the morning, there's traffic, streetlights, a background heartbeat of noise. Out here, it's silence. And when something happens, you feel it in your bones, like the dark itself has leaned closer. That night, it started with a flicker. Our station lights dipped, came back, dipped again. I remember looking up from my screen at the same moment Davis, our other night dispatcher, looked up from his coffee. "Brown out," he said. But it wasn't. The monitors went black. The overheads clicked off. The whole building seemed to exhale. And when the emergency backup lights kicked on, the world outside the windows was pitch. No glow from the road. No lights on in the houses across the street. Just darkness so thick it felt pressed against the glass. We're used to small outages. Storms take out a line. A transformer blows. But this was bigger. The phones lit up. We have 6 lines. All of them started flashing at once. I grabbed the nearest. 911. "What's your emergency?" A man's voice came through so fast and sharp it felt like it cut the air. "They're moving. They're moving in the dark." "Sir, calm down. What's your location?" He gave me a street I didn't recognize. Not surprising. Rural maps can be tricky. But then he said something else, almost in a whisper. "They came when the lights went out." I motioned to Davis to start tracing the call. "Who came, sir? Are you in danger?" The man's breathing was heavy, ragged. "They're not people. They—" His voice broke off, replaced by the sound of something clattering in the background. A sharp scrape, like furniture being dragged. "Sir? Hello." He came back on, shouting now. "They can't see me if I don't move. They can't." Then a scream, high and desperate, like he'd been holding in until it ripped out of him. And then, nothing. The line went dead. I just stared at the phone for a moment, still holding the receiver to my ear. Davis was already on another line, nodding, eyes wide. "They're all calling about the same thing," he mouthed. We took call after call. A woman saying something stood in her yard, too tall to be a person. A truck driver on county line, swearing shapes were keeping pace with him in the fields, no matter how fast he drove. A kid, maybe 10, crying because his parents told him to stay in his room, but now someone was breathing outside his door. In every voice, there was the same edge of disbelief and terror. It was hard to keep my own voice steady. Dispatchers are trained to stay calm, to be the anchor in the chaos. But there's something about hearing the same fear from so many different people in such a short time. It gets under your skin. The strangest thing was the silence between calls. No traffic, no dogs barking, no distant rumble of generators kicking in. Just dead, heavy quiet, broken only by the sound of ringing phones. By 1:27 a.m., we'd gotten reports from 3 counties. It wasn't just our area, it was spreading, and the power company wasn't answering. Davis leaned over, voice low. "You notice something?" "What?" "None of them say it's bright enough to see. Even when they're outside, it's darker than dark, like the moon's gone." He was right. I glanced out the window several times. The sky should have had some faint glow from the moon or stars, but it was just blank. A black, so total it felt wrong to look at. Another call came in. A man named Russell, voice trembling so badly I had to ask him to repeat himself 3 times. "They're at the barn now," he said. "I can hear them sliding against the walls." "Russell, stay inside. Is your house secure?" "Yeah, but I think they know I'm here." "I think they—" There was a loud bang in the background, and Russell gasped. Then he whispered something that made my scalp prickle. "They're making the dark louder." I asked what he meant, but the line cut out. Davis and I exchanged a look we didn't have words for. By 2 a.m., the call volume slowed. Not because things had calmed down, because people weren't calling anymore. And I couldn't stop thinking about that man's scream in the first call. The way it cut off. We got a last call at 2:12. A woman on a rural route. She was whispering so softly I could barely hear her. "I think it's in the house." "What's in the house, ma'am?" "It's in the hallway. It's like a shadow, but thick. It moves wrong. And it's hungry." I kept her talking, asked her to stay in one room, lock the door, stay quiet. But after a moment, she said something that chilled me to the core. "It knows my name." Then her voice was drowned out by this low, wet sound, like mud being stirred. And the line went dead. When I looked over, Davis was staring at his own monitor, frozen. "What?" I asked. "They're not showing up on any maps," he said. "The addresses they're giving us, they're not there anymore." That was the moment I realized something was happening that wasn't just a power outage. Something had changed in the dark. Something was moving. And we were in the dead zone that IT started just after midnight. The board was lit up with call after call, and almost every one of them came from the same stretch of road or the small farms along it. County line. The storm that had knocked the power out the night before had already moved on. No rain, no thunder. Just the outage and whatever came after. When the first call came in, I thought it was just more of the same, people panicking because the lights were still out. I was wrong. The woman's voice was trembling, but not in that frantic, high-pitched way you hear when someone's in danger. This was lower, quieter, like she was afraid to speak at all. She said her name was Meredith, lived off a dirt road behind an old grain silo. She told me she'd gone outside to see if her generator had finally kicked in. She stopped there for a long time. Long enough that I thought maybe we'd lost connection. And then she whispered, "It's too quiet." I told her I didn't understand. She said it again, slower this time. "It's too quiet." I was about to tell her the storm probably scared off the birds for the night, but then she started listing the things she wasn't hearing. No crickets, no frogs, no leaves moving, no hum from her neighbor's generator, just her own breathing. Her voice broke a little, and she said, "It's not just quiet. It's wrong." I told her to go back inside, lock her doors, and stay put until we could get someone out there. But she interrupted me, said she could see movement out past the tree line. Not people, not animals, just shapes. I asked her to describe them, but all she said was, "They move when I'm not looking right at them." The line went dead before I could respond. At the time, I thought maybe her phone had died. But an hour later, I found her number in the callback queue. 6 attempts from our side. Not a single ring on hers. It was right after I logged that when the next call came in. This one was from a guy named John, a farmer whose voice I recognized from years of hearing him on the scanner. Big man. Always sounded steady, even when his cattle broke the fence or coyotes got too close. But tonight he sounded like he'd swallowed ice. "I can't hear my own boots," he said. "You understand what I'm telling you?" I didn't. He explained that he'd gone out to check his livestock after the generator failed. And when he stepped off his porch, the sound just stopped. Not muffled, not faint, stopped. He stomped his boot against the wood while we were on the line, and I swear I couldn't hear a damn thing through my headset. No echo, no thump, nothing. Then his breathing hitched. "They're out there," he said. "They're all around the fence." I asked him who. He said it wasn't who. It was what. And before I could stop him, he opened his gate. The next thing I heard was the sound of him running. But it didn't sound like running. It sounded like dragging, like his footsteps were being swallowed up before they could exist. And then he shouted, "They don't have faces," before his line cut into static. By then, my skin was prickling so hard it felt like every hair on my arms was being pulled. The silence wasn't just outside their houses. It was eating them. More calls came in over the next 40 minutes, all the same story. Someone would step outside to check the power or look for a missing pet, and they'd notice it, that deep, unnatural quiet, the kind that makes your pulse sound too loud in your own ears. And always, there were shapes in the dark. One man swore he saw them press flat against the ground, like shadows that had peeled themselves off whatever was casting them. A teenage girl whispered that she saw one leaning in the air above her porch like it was deciding whether to come down. The common thread was that none of them could see the shapes moving directly. They only shifted when eyes slid away. And every caller, every single one, spoke slower and slower the longer we talked, like they were being smothered by that silence. By 1:40 a.m., I realized something else. Not one of the calls had come from the middle of town. Whatever was happening was moving along the outskirts, hugging the unlit roads. The power companies still hadn't restored service, and the sheriff's department had their hands full with downed lines and blocked roads. Dispatch couldn't send anyone fast enough. I kept telling callers to get inside and stay away from the windows, but I knew even as I said it that most of them wouldn't listen. Curiosity eats people alive. And when the dark is that complete, you start wanting proof that it's just your imagination. Around 2 a.m., a final call came and that froze me. The voice was familiar. A kid named Tanner, 16, maybe 17. His mom had called earlier about her husband not coming home from work. Tanner had stayed up waiting for him. His voice was thin and breathless. "I think the dark is in the house." I asked him what he meant. He said the lights had flickered earlier, just once, and when they did, he saw something in the corner of the living room. A shape darker than the dark. And now, even though the lights were back off, he could tell it was closer. He whispered, "It's between me and the door." I told him not to move, to stay on the line. I heard him shift, maybe trying to look without looking directly. Then, in the quiet between us, I realized I couldn't hear his breathing anymore. I asked if he was still there. He said, "I can't hear me either." The line didn't cut this time. It just went blank. No static, no sound, just nothing. And in that nothing, for the first time in my life, I thought I could hear my own blood moving in my head. When I logged his call, I stared at the board for a long time. So many names, so many numbers, and most of them, Meredith, John, Tanner, were still blinking red. No callback possible. I kept thinking about how they all described it. That quiet that didn't just take the world's noise. It took theirs too. And maybe that's what the shapes were. Not creatures. Not people. Just the empty spaces left behind that I thought I'd gotten used to the dark by then. 2 nights into the blackout, and it wasn't the power outage that was bothering me anymore. It was everything else. The air felt heavier. The silence was wrong. People were calling in about strange shapes outside their homes. Shapes they could see only because they blocked out what little starlight there was. But that night, it stopped being just shapes. It was just after midnight when the radio on my desk hissed to life. The voice on the other end was shaky. One of the emergency crews out on County Line Road. "A dispatch, we've got eyes out here." I remember frowning at the term. "Eyes." He hesitated, then said, "Reflective eyes. Like an animal's. But there's too many." That's when I heard the other voices in the background. Low, uncertain, trying to whisper, but still cutting through the static. They weren't panicked yet, just unsettled. "How many are we talking?" I asked. The guy exhaled hard through the radio. "Dozens. Maybe more. They're just out in the field, staring at us." I glanced at the map on the wall, tracing my finger over the county roads. County line was nothing but farmland and open dirt lots. Nothing should have been out there except maybe a few cows, and cows don't stare at you from 50 feet away without moving. "What's your position?" I asked. He rattled off an address. I knew the property, or at least I knew of it. It used to be a working farm until the owner passed. His son had left it to rot. It was just bare land now. "What were they doing?" I asked. The line went quiet for a long moment. Too long. I thought we'd lost them. Then his voice came back, lower than before. "Nothing. They're just standing there. They're not making a sound. Not moving. Just watching." I started to say something else, but then there was a rustling sound. Not static, but something moving close to his mic. I could hear his breathing pick up. "They just blinked," he whispered. "All at once." I froze. "What do you mean all at once?" "They're in rows," he said. Like a formation. One of the other crew members' voices bled through the radio. We need to get out of here, man. This isn't right. The guy holding the mic muttered something I couldn't catch. Then the radio crackled with movement, boots crunching over dirt, a truck door slamming. He came back on, voice trembling now. They're getting closer. I pulled the cord phone to my other ear, dialing the sheriff's number with one hand while keeping the radio pressed against my shoulder. How close? Too close, he said. There. The radio cut out for half a second. When it came back, there was shouting. They're surrounding us. I heard the engine start, tires spinning in loose dirt, someone cursing under their breath. Then just for a second, there was a sound in the background I couldn't explain. Not an animal, not a person. It was like a low hum, almost mechanical, almost a growl, but steady. Too steady. The truck roared away, and the connection went in and out. The last thing I heard before the static swallowed them was one of the crew screaming, not in pain, not even in fear exactly, but in pure confusion. What the hell are they? And then nothing. They called an hour later. Said they'd made it back to the fire station without seeing another pair of eyes. When I asked them to describe what they saw in more detail, their answers didn't match. One guy swore they were human-sized, but hunched low like they were crawling. Another insisted they were tall, taller than a man, but that the eyes were too far apart for a normal face. The third said they were wrong. When I pressed him on what wrong meant, he just said, they didn't blink right. That stuck with me. Didn't blink right. The reports kept coming that night. People calling in from farmhouses miles apart, describing the same thing. Clusters of eyes out in the fields, never moving, never making a sound. And the strangest part? No one could get a good look at what they were attached to. Every time a flashlight beam or a truck's headlights tried to catch them, the eyes would vanish. Not run away, not fade. Just disappear. But the moment the light was gone, they'd be back. Watching. Around 3 a.m., I got a call from a woman out near the old grain silos. Her voice was shaking, and I could hear her pacing. They're closer now, she whispered. I thought they were deer at first. But deer don't stand in a perfect circle, and they don't come closer without moving their feet. That last part made my stomach turn. I asked her to stay on the line to describe what she saw. She kept saying the same thing over and over. They're watching me, like she couldn't process anything else. Then she said, "Oh, God, one of them's in my yard." I heard her step back, the phone cord dragging along the floor. "They're not in the field anymore," she said. "They're here." And then, just like the others, the call dropped. By dawn, the eyes were gone. No prints in the dirt. No tracks in the grass. Just empty fields. But I couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't gone anywhere. That they were still there, just waiting for the night to fall again. And when it did, we'd see them again. That I thought the worst part would be when the lights went out. I was wrong. It's what came after that's been eating at me. By the time the grid came back online, I'd been at the console for nearly 20 hours straight. My eyes burned from staring at dead monitors. My ears ached from the constant buzz of backup equipment, and my brain felt wrong, like it had been rewired to expect only darkness and silence. When the fluorescence above us flickered back to life, the whole room flinched. Every dispatcher in the center turned toward the sudden glow like a group of startled animals. Some smiled. Some cried. I didn't do either. I just sat there, watching the green and amber LEDs blink back onto the console in front of me, feeling like the light wasn't supposed to be here. The phone lines lit up instantly. Every unit in the county checking in, every resident desperate to tell us what they'd seen or heard during the blackout. The noise was deafening after so many hours of nothing. My headset filled with overlapping voices. My fingers tripped over the keyboard trying to log them all. It should have been a relief. It wasn't. Because in the middle of that chaos, I noticed it. Not at first. At first, it was just the sound of people coming back to life. Generators humming, dogs barking, wind rustling leaves again. But then I heard something that didn't belong. It was faint, buried deep in the background of a woman's voice as she told me her husband never came back from checking the shed. It wasn't static. It wasn't wind. It was a whisper. I told myself I was imagining it. I'd been awake too long, under too much stress. But the next call came in, and the next. Every single one had it. A man reporting his daughter missing. A teenager saying his neighbor was standing in the yard staring at his house. An old farmer insisting there were tracks. in his cornfield that hadn't been there yesterday. Different voices, different places, but under all of them, the same low, breathy murmur. No words I could make out, just presence. I switched my console to record playback, scrolled back a few seconds, turned up the gain. It was clearer there, the kind of clarity that makes your skin feel tight. The whisper wasn't a single voice. It was many, all layered on top of each other, speaking in rhythms that almost synced, like waves crashing out of step. I pulled my headset off. My hands shook as I pushed my chair back from the desk. 2 consoles over, Mark, the night shift lead, caught my eye. He'd gone pale. His lips moved, forming the same silent question I was asking myself. Do you hear it too? Before I could say anything, another call came in. I took it automatically, voice on autopilot. 911, what's your emergency? But the person on the other end didn't answer. I could hear breathing, slow, steady, in my left ear. And under that, louder than ever, the whispers. Hello, can you speak to me? I said, my throat tight. The breathing quickened. And then, right before the line clicked dead, something slipped through the static. Not a full sentence, just enough to twist my stomach into knots. Still here. I must have gone still for too long, because Mark was suddenly beside me, one hand on the back of my chair, asking if I was okay. I lied, told him it was nothing, but my eyes kept going to the active call list on my screen. One by one, I saw the tags. No contact. Unable to locate caller. Caller gone on arrival. It wasn't just 1 or 2 people missing. It was dozens. Some had been last heard from during the blackout. Some had called after the power came back. And the ones who called after all had the whispers. The rest of the shift blurred together. Units went out to addresses and came back with empty reports. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle. Just houses that felt wrong. That's what Officer Kemp said over the radio after searching a farmhouse where the parents and 2 kids were reported missing. It's like the air's heavy, he told me. Like we shouldn't be here. I didn't tell him I'd been feeling that all night. Around 5 a.m., I stepped outside for air. The parking lot was slick from a thin mist. Streetlights glowed orange, casting fuzzy halos that barely reached the edges of the lot. The world was too quiet again. Not the blackout kind of quiet. This was selective. The wind moved. My jacket rustled, but there were no insects. No distant hum of cars. No birds starting their morning song. I caught my own reflection in the dark glass of the dispatch center door. For a second, I thought there was someone behind me, a shape just past my shoulder, taller than me, blurred at the edges. When I turned, there was nothing. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Back at my console, I found a new voicemail alert in the system queue. Normally, I delete it without a second thought. Most of those are accidental dials. But something about the timestamp made me stop. It was from during the blackout. I pressed play. At first, it was just static. Then a woman's voice came through, shaking. Please, they're inside. My stomach dropped. The whispers swelled behind her, so loud they made her words hard to hear. She kept talking. I couldn't tell if she was praying or begging. And then there was a thump, a sound like fabric dragging across the receiver. And finally, a single phrase in that layered, inhuman whisper. You hear us now? The line cut off. I deleted it. I don't know why. Reflex, maybe. Like if I erased it, it wouldn't exist anymore. But I can still hear it. I still hear all of them. When the day shift came in, we didn't mention the whispers. Not to the supervisors. Not to the new dispatchers. We just handed over our chairs and went home like it had been any other night. I told myself I'd sleep, that I'd forget the sound of those voices. But when I closed my eyes, I didn't see darkness. I saw a field, flat, stretching forever. And in that field, dozens of figures standing perfectly still. Their faces blurred, their mouths moving in sync. And at the very center, a space where someone should have been, but wasn't. I woke up gasping, my phone buzzing in my hand. It was a voicemail. No caller ID. I didn't want to play it. I did anyway. Breathing. Whispers. And then my own voice, repeating the same 3 words over and over. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'd been working dispatch for 2 months when I found the box. It wasn't like some big discovery moment, either. No secret door, no dramatic flashlight beam catching on something hidden. It was just there, sitting in the corner of the back storage room like it had been waiting for me. That room was always cold. Not air-conditioned cold, still heavy cold, like the air hadn't moved in years. Nobody went back there except to grab paper reams or headset spares. The light bulb in the ceiling had a faint buzz to it, so you could hear in the silence this tiny electrical hum that made your ears feel itchy. I was in there looking for extra forms, the carbon copy kind we use when the system goes down. I remember I was already annoyed because the printer in the main room had jammed again, and Harris, my shift lead, was pretending not to notice. That's when I saw it. A cardboard box about knee-high, tucked behind an old file cabinet. It had no label, no department stamp, no dust pattern like it had been slid in and out recently. It was the kind of box you could tell had been in the same spot for decades, corners soft, cardboard turning a pale yellow. But here's the thing. The top wasn't taped. It was just folded shut. I should have left it. Honestly, that's what you're supposed to do when you find something off record in a government building. Call in, log it, let someone higher up deal with it. But I didn't. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was that still cold air in there. The way it felt like the room was holding its breath, waiting for me to open it. I set it on the metal table in the corner and unfolded the flaps. Inside were cassette tapes. Dozens of them. Some in cracked plastic cases, some loose, all covered in a thin layer of dust. The labels were handwritten in block letters, dates spanning from the late 80s to the early 2000s. No names, no call numbers, just dates. The oldest one, January 14th, 1988, was on top. Now, here's the thing. We've always recorded calls. Even back in the 80s, they had reel-to-reel setups. But the tapes are stored in a climate-controlled archive 2 towns over. Nothing is ever just in a random box. I picked one up and turned it over in my hand. There is something about the handwriting on the label, sharp and precise, like each letter had been drawn with intention. That's when Harris walked in. He stopped in the doorway, looked at the box, then at me. "Where'd you find that?" he asked. "In the corner," I said. "Wasn't labeled." "What are these?" He didn't answer right away. He just stepped in, closed the door behind him, and stood there for a second, staring at the tapes. "You shouldn't mess with those," he said finally. "They're not official." I laughed a little. "Not official? They're in the building." "They're not ours," he said, voice low. "And you didn't see them." Then he grabbed the forms I'd come in for and left. I stood there alone, holding that January 14th, 1988 tape, and I knew I wasn't going to just walk away. That night, after my shift, I came back. I told myself I was just going to take one, just to see. The box was still there. No one had moved it. I picked a tape from near the top, March 9th, 1994, and slipped it into my bag. At home, I dug out an old Walkman from a drawer. The batteries were corroded, so I had to run to the gas station to get new ones. By the time I got back, the apartment felt different. Like the air was thicker, like I brought something in with me. I pressed play. At first, it was just static. Then a man's voice came through, shaky but clear. "Please, you have to send someone. The bridge collapsed. People are in the water, they're—" His words cut off in a burst of static. Then a female dispatcher's voice. Calm, professional. "Sir, can you tell me your location?" The man sobbed. "I told you, the County 6 bridge. It's gone." Another burst of static. People are screaming. More static. Then silence. I stopped the tape, heart pounding. Here's the problem. The County 6 bridge has never collapsed. Not in the 90s. Not ever. I grew up here. I would have remembered. I rewound, pressed play again. Same thing. Same voice. Same impossible disaster. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept hearing his voice, that raw panic in it, the sound of water in the background. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. Every ring of the phone made me flinch. Every static pop on the line made my stomach knot. That night, I took another tape. This one was from July 22nd, 1989. A woman's voice, breathless. "It's coming down the hill toward my house. God, it's taller than the trees." Static. The dispatcher. "Ma'am, what's coming toward your house?" Her voice broke. It's not a building. It's moving." Static swallowed her words. I froze. There was something in her tone, not just fear, but confusion, like her brain couldn't make sense of what she was seeing. The next morning, I checked every archive I could access. News reports, old police logs, emergency summaries. Nothing from July 22nd, 1989. No disasters. No strange incidents. Just nothing. But the tapes kept calling to me. It got to the point where I'd stay late after my shift, listening in the storage room with the door locked. The smell of the old cardboard, the hum of that ceiling bulb, it all became part of the ritual. One night, I picked a tape from 2001. The voice was a child's, maybe 9 or 10. "There's fire in the sky," he said, matter of fact, like he was describing the weather. "And there's people walking up the street, but they're wrong. They don't bend right." The dispatcher asked him where he was. The boy whispered, "They're at the door now." Static. I sat there in the dark storage room for a long time after that. I didn't even bother checking the archives. I knew I wouldn't find anything. Some of the tapes had warped sound, like the voices were bending. Others had long stretches of silence, broken by faint noises, knocking, crying, something that might have been laughter. And slowly, I started to notice something else. In the background of some calls, under the voices and static, there was whispering. I couldn't make out words, but it was there, low and constant, like the caller wasn't alone when they spoke. One night, after listening to a tape from 1997, I took out my earbuds and realized the whispering hadn't stopped. It was still there, in the room with me. I slammed the box shut and shoved it back into the corner. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I told myself I was done. But the next night, I was back in that room. I don't know what I was looking for. Proof? A pattern? Some final tape that would explain everything? Instead, I found one with no date on the label. Just a single word written in that same sharp handwriting. Soon. I didn't listen to it. Not then. I just held it, feeling the weight of it in my hand, the way the reels inside shifted when I tilted it. And I swear, it felt warm. I thought the first night with the tapes was just weird. Not scary. Not even that unusual for an old dispatch archive. You find strange stuff when you dig deep enough. Calls that don't make sense. People rambling about things that don't add up. But this wasn't like the usual weird. This was the kind that sticks with you. The kind that makes you keep replaying it in your head when you're lying in bed, trying to sleep. It started when I decided to listen to more of the tapes. I told myself it was just curiosity, but deep down, I think I already knew I was looking for something wrong. Something that would prove I hadn't imagined the strangeness from that first one. The tape I chose was unlabeled, just like the others. The plastic felt brittle in my hand. It had a faint smell like dust and old cigarette smoke, as if it had been in some drawer no one opened for decades. I slipped into the player, hit play, and leaned back. At first, there was just the faint hiss of static. Then a voice. Male. Calm, but with that shaky edge you hear in someone who's pretending they're fine. There's been an accident, he said. On County Road 6. A truck jackknifed it. Spilled fuel all over the road. 2 cars are on fire. My hand froze over the notepad. The way he said it, the detail, the pauses, it sounded like a real call. Dispatch on the recording responded like normal. Asking location. Asking for the condition of the drivers. The man said one was trapped. Another was unconscious. He sounded like he was looking right at them. I wrote down the date from the label on the box the tape had been in, August 14th, 1998. Later, when I got home, I checked online. There was a crash on County Road 6. 2 cars burned. 1 driver trapped. But it didn't happen on August 14th. It happened on August 19th, 5 days later. At first, I told myself the date on the box must have been wrong, that whoever cataloged the tapes had just messed up. But the handwriting on the box was neat, deliberate, the kind of handwriting someone uses when they're making a permanent record. I tried to push out of my mind. But the more tapes I played, the harder that became. The second one was a woman. She was crying, her voice high and thin like she was running while she spoke. "They're everywhere," she said. "The water's up to my knees. My basement's flooded, and it's still raining. You need to send somebody." The dispatcher's voice was calm, telling her help was on the way. I checked the date from the box. May 2nd, 2003. The flooding? It happened May 5th. 3 days later. Same address she gave. Same street name. The recordings were like predictions. Not guesses. Not vague. Exact, down to the street corner, the voices, the details. but they came before the real events happened. I kept thinking, if I'd been working dispatch back then, could I have stopped it? Could anyone? The next one I listened to was different. It wasn't disaster. It wasn't even an emergency at first. The voice was low, almost a whisper. Male. Older. She's outside, he said. The dispatcher asked who. He didn't answer, just repeated it. She's outside. She's been standing there since last night. He gave an address, and I recognized it. Not from any recent call. From something I remembered reading in old case files when I first started training. A man was found dead in his home. Heart failure. They said it wasn't suspicious, but the neighbors swore he'd heard him screaming the night before. No record of anyone standing outside his house. I checked the date on the tape. It was 3 days before his death. When I pressed stop, I realized my hand was shaking. Not because of what I'd heard, but because of something I hadn't noticed until just then. In every single tape, every one of them, there was a faint sound under the caller's voice. I thought it was static at first, but the more I listened, the clearer it became. It was whispering, not in English, not in anything I recognized, just this soft, low thread of syllables weaving through the background like it was part of the air itself. The problem was when I tried to focus on it, it would fade, like it knew I was listening. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted to know how deep this went before I brought it up. So I stayed late every night that week, going through the tapes. And I found something that made my stomach knot. One of the calls was from my street. Not my house, but close enough that I could picture the exact spot. It was a man, panicked, saying there'd been a break-in. That someone had been in his house while he slept. That he woke up to find muddy footprints on the carpet. The date on the tape? For days before it happened to my neighbor last year. Same details. Same footprints. I sat there in the dim light of the storage room, holding the cassette like it might burn me. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. How could these calls exist before the events? Why weren't they logged? Why were they locked away in a box no one seemed to know about? That night, I dreamed of the whispering. Not the words, just the sound. It was close, right next to my ear. When I woke up, I could still hear it. Only for a second. Then it was gone. I started wondering if the people who made these calls ever survived what they were describing, or if they were something else entirely. Not witnesses, not victims, messengers. And if they were warning us, why hide the tapes? I didn't want to listen to any more of them. Not after the last one. Not after realizing what these tapes were. But it had been eating at me all night. The box sat there in the corner of my living room. The cardboard edges frayed and soft like it had been moved 100 times over the years. I tried ignoring it, turning up the TV, scrolling on my phone, anything, but it felt like the room was leaning toward it. Like gravity itself wanted me to open it again. And there was still one tape left. The last one. I told myself I wouldn't play it. I told myself I'd take it back to the station, put it back in the archive, let someone else be the idiot who pushed their luck. But at around 2:30 a.m., I was sitting cross-legged on the carpet with the recorder in front of me, my thumb hovering over the play button. The label was blank, just like all the others. No date, no case number, no handwriting, just black plastic with the faint smell of dust and something else, something almost metallic. I took a deep breath and pushed play. The hiss came first, that faint tape static like wind in your ears. Then a click and then my voice. Dispatch. What's your emergency? I froze. It wasn't kind of my voice. It wasn't an impression of my voice. It was mine. Exactly mine. Same pitch. Same inflection. The way I say dispatch a little too quickly, like I'm trying to get to the meat of the call faster. The problem was, I'd never taken this call. A man answered, his voice low, almost whispering. You need to listen to me. You don't have much time. My recorded voice didn't sound confused. It sounded calm, professional. Sir, slow down. Tell me what's happening. There's going to be a fire, the man said. 2 blocks east of Miller Street. Corner house with the green shutters. I knew that street. It was a quiet residential block, maybe 10 minutes from where I lived. When will this happen? My voice asked. The man hesitated. 48 hours from now. Just after midnight. There was a pause on the tape, long enough for me to hear my own shallow breathing in the background. Then my voice said, How do you know this? The man's answer sent a chill down my spine. Because I heard it. On a tape. Just like you're hearing me now. I stopped the recorder. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped it. This had to be a prank. Some elaborate, incredibly specific prank that someone had gone way out of their way to set up. Except who? I'd only told one other person about finding these tapes, and that was Mark, one of the senior dispatchers. And Mark wasn't the kind of guy who played jokes. I pressed play again. My voice came back on, steady, trying to keep control. "Sir, where did you get that tape?" "I don't know," the man said. "It showed up in a box on my porch 3 days ago. No return address. Just there." I listened to one. It was my own voice, calling 911 about a car crash. And then it happened, exactly like I'd heard it. Same words, same sounds, everything. On the tape, I said, "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because this one is about you." I felt my stomach drop. The hiss filled the space again, just for a moment. I think maybe my recorded self was trying to process it, the same way I was now. The man's voice returned. I listened to it. "It's you. You're making a call. I don't know to who, but you sound terrified. There's something in your voice I've never heard before. Like you know you're not getting out." My recorded voice. "When does this happen?" The man. "August 14th, 3:17 a.m. My breath caught in my throat. "That was 4 days from now." On the tape, I said, "Do you have it? Can I hear it?" The man said, "It's not here anymore. I burned it." I thought maybe if I destroyed it, it wouldn't happen. But I can still hear it in my head. "You're begging someone to stay away from you." And then there's this sound like he trailed off, like something dragging itself across the floor. I paused the tape again, my heart hammering. I didn't want to hear more. I didn't want to know more. But my hand moved on its own, hitting play again. The man's breathing was uneven now, like he was working himself up just saying it. After that, you scream. Not a normal scream. It's like someone is pulling it out of you. And then there's nothing, just dead air. On the tape, my recorded voice was quieter now. "Sir, what's your name?" The man hesitated. "Doesn't matter. You won't find me. I'm not staying in one place long enough for it to matter." There was a faint sound in the background then, a soft thunk like a door shutting somewhere far away. The man said, "They'll tell you not to believe it. They'll say it's just noise, just old junk. But you know better. You've been listening. You know these things are real." And then the line went dead. The tape ended with that same static hiss, and then the faint mechanical click as it stopped. I just sat there for a while, staring at the recorder. My mind kept circling the same question over and over. If this was real, what the hell was I supposed to do? The other tapes, the ones with disasters that never happened, I could almost write those off as mistakes. People panicking, seeing things, false alarms. The ones that did match real events? Those were harder. I'd already looked up 2 of them, and the timelines didn't make sense. The calls were made before the incidents took place. Days before. But this was something else. This was my voice. A call I hadn't made yet. And the date was coming fast. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined myself in some unknown place at 3:17 a.m., begging someone to stay away, hearing that dragging sound coming closer. By the next morning, I convinced myself I was going to ignore it. Just live my life. Go to work. Pretend none of this ever happened. But when I got to the station, Mark was waiting for me. He had this look on his face, not angry, not curious, just unsettled, like he'd seen something he wished he hadn't. "Hey," he said, "you've been going through old archive stuff, right?" I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. "You didn't check anything out on the log," he said. "But I saw the shelf. That box you pulled? It's not on the manifest. Never was." I froze. "What do you mean?" He glanced around, lowered his voice. "I mean, it's not supposed to exist. And if anyone asks, you never found it. That should have been my out." I could have handed the box to him right then, walked away, pretended I'd never seen it. But something in his tone, something told me he knew more than he was saying. That night, I went home and put the box back in the closet. I told myself I'd leave it there until after August 14th. If nothing happened, fine. If something did, maybe the tapes could tell me why. The problem was, when I checked the box the next morning, the last tape, the one with my voice, was gone. I didn't take it out. I didn't lend it to anyone. It was just gone. And now, I keep thinking about what the man said, about how he burned his tape but could still hear it in his head. Because I can hear mine now. The call I haven't made yet. The way my voice cracks when I say, stay away. The long pause before the dragging sound starts. And the worst part? I think I can tell now what that sound really is. It's not something dragging itself toward me. It's me, dragging myself away I told myself I wasn't going to listen to it. I told myself it was just another tape. But after the last one, after hearing my own voice speaking from a date that hadn't happened yet, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The box was still in my locker. Nobody else knew I had it. And every time I walked past, I felt it like a weight pressing against me, almost humming. The thing is, I didn't want to admit it, but part of me was afraid of it. Not in the way you fear a dangerous animal, but the way you fear looking too long in the mirror when you're alone. That tiny whisper in your head wondering, what if something looks back? 2 days passed before I gave in. The station was quiet that night. Just me, another dispatcher across the room, and a sleepy kind of silence that comes in the dead hours between midnight and 3. I pulled the box out, trying not to look suspicious. My hands felt clumsy as I sifted through the tapes, each one labeled in that neat, too-perfect handwriting, except the last. It didn't have a label, just a smudge of faded ink, like someone had started to write and stopped. I slid it into the player. The first thing I noticed wasn't the sound. It was the lights. They dimmed, just slightly, like the power had flickered somewhere far away. I froze with my finger on the play button, looking around. My coworker didn't react. She was typing something, head down. I pressed play. There was no tape hiss this time. No warm crackle of old magnetic film. Just silence. A deep, empty silence, like the room on the other end was swallowing all sound. I waited for something. A voice. A noise. Anything. And then, in my headset, not through the tape, I heard the tone. The live call tone. I yanked the headset off, heart jumping. My board lit up. A new call coming in. But when I looked at the number, my stomach twisted. It was the same number from the future date tape. The one with my own voice. And the timestamp on my system said the call wasn't supposed to exist yet. Not for another 4 days. I put the headset back on. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Hello. It was me. Not like the last tape where it sounded like me reading from a script. This was me right now. Same tone, same panic in my breathing. You can hear me, right? My voice asked. It's happening. I swallowed hard. Who is this? The other me laughed, but it was short and brittle. Don't play dumb. You know exactly who this is. You've been listening to them. All of them. I didn't know what to say. My coworker was still across the room, completely unaware that I was talking to myself. What's happening? I asked finally. You're about to, my voice said. In about 30 seconds. The lights will go again. Harder this time. Don't. The line crackled violently, cutting the rest off. And then the lights did flicker. Not just dim. They stuttered, like the air itself was jerking around me. The monitors blinked. The hum of the HVAC sputtered and groaned. When the power surged back, I was still holding the headset. The line was dead, except the tape was still playing. And now I could hear something new. Not my voice, but breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Too close to the microphone. It wasn't coming through the dispatch system. It was inside the recording. The breathing stopped, and a whisper slid into the space between the static. Turn around. I didn't. I couldn't. My neck felt locked, my whole body rigid in my chair. My eyes stayed fixed on the tape deck, the little wheels spinning. The whisper came again. This time, softer. Turn around. I glanced toward my coworker. She was still there, still typing. She hadn't noticed anything. Slowly, like peeling off a bandage, I turned my head. There was no one there. Just the empty aisle between the cubicles, stretching toward the back of the room. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. My headset was slick with sweat against my skin. Then the breathing came back, louder, directly into my other ear. I ripped the headset off and threw it on the desk. My chair spun a little as I stood. My coworker looked up finally, frowning. You okay? She asked. I forced a nod. Yeah, just feedback. She went back to her screen. I looked down at the tape. It had stopped spinning, except I hadn't touched it. I don't know why I did it, but I hit rewind. The wheels spun backwards, the soft hiss filling the space. I stopped it and pressed play again. This time, the tape didn't start with silence. It started with my own voice saying my full name. And then, you're not going to leave this room. I hit stop so fast I nearly broke the button. My chest felt tight. I didn't want to hear the rest. But I couldn't leave it there. My coworker got up to refill her coffee. I waited until she was gone, then pressed play again. "You're not going to leave this room," my voice repeated. "Not when it starts. You think you're going to get up, but you won't. You think you'll run for the door, but it won't be there. You'll look at the wall, and it'll be wrong." There was a long pause. Just static. Then, when it happens, don't pick up the phone. The tape clicked. The lights flickered, and my console lit up with an incoming call. Same number. Same ID. The headset was still sitting on the desk, the coiled wire twitching slightly, like something was pulling it toward the floor. I didn't move. The phone kept ringing. The tape was still spinning, but I could swear the sound of it was slowing down, each rotation dragging like it was caught in molasses. The phone rang again. The whisper came back. "Pick it up." I shut my eyes. The phone stopped ringing. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no movement. Just my own heartbeat in my ears. Then the lights went out completely. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. Could have been seconds. Could have been hours. I only knew I wasn't alone. I could feel someone breathing in the space just behind my chair, slow and heavy, like they had all the time in the world. When the lights finally came back, the headset was gone. The tape deck was empty, and the box in my locker wasn't there anymore. I didn't go looking for it. I think it's going to find me again when it's ready. And when it does, I'm afraid the voice I hear won't be mine anymore.